Hello, you're very welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast, number 34. I'm Shane, that's Daragh.
How you doing?
And we're here to review the weekend's action in very
We're
good,
here to boast.
In
We're
very
here
good
to
spirits
boast.
we are, yes.
No, listen.
Obviously there was other rugby that happened, but I didn't really care about any of that. It was all about Lansdowne Road, the Aviva Stadium, Ireland 16, All Blacks 9.
It was. It was all about that.
It was this weekend, yeah. And it was delightful. It was thoroughly delightful from where we were sitting. We were in different places watching it. I was in a pub in town waiting to have a gig, and
I was at home. Yeah.
And it was mad. The whole town was on standstill watching it. Even friends of mine who aren't into rugby were into that game and watching that game, and that was I even actually earlier in the day met a couple of Americans on the Dart, the train into town, and they were going to the match. They were a couple of Pittsburgh Steelers fans who didn't really have a clue, but they'd got tickets.
Hey, this is heck of an introduction.
This
to
is
the
it.
sport.
This is what I'm thinking. Yeah, for the love of rugby, there was no better test match to kind of show people, because there was actually a friend of mine who her first rugby game ever was the last test of the Lions tour, the All Blacks v Lions, and the draw and the anticlimactic draw of it all, and he was just like, "Is that it?" at the end of it all. And I was like, I couldn't really argue, which was annoying.
Yeah.
But this one, there was no such argument and no such draw, although it was on the cards towards the end. But
Was it really?
I don't know if it really was. To be honest, they looked thoroughly beaten, which is a rare enough thing, but certainly from an Irish perspective it's a rare enough thing. But,
listen, we're gonna do our best. Like, the last few days have just been all celebrations and glory and reveling in it. We are going to do our best for the purposes of the show to take the Irish caps off and just try and break down what actually happened in that game, and we're obviously going to look at some other things as well. But
we set up last week with our kind of winning conditions for both. That was the outline of the podcast last week, if anyone watched it. And it was interesting, because like the one point we came back to was the smashy smash game, the physicality of it and the collisions, and that was like really the salient point, I felt, for certainly for the bulk of the first half, but also the bulk of the game. It was what we suspected, what we expected of Ireland in terms of what they needed to bring to try and topple the All Blacks. It was all that. And what really impressed me was, given just how physical that game plan is, the fact that they managed to sustain that effort to the 80-minute mark, in kind of contrast with some of the previous kind of battles they've had against the All Blacks in recent years. It was good to see that fitness level hold up. But it was just phenomenal to see the job done on Whitelock and Retallick. We had obviously stressed that point a lot last week about them being lacking in the Chicago game, noted for their absence, and noted for their return in the return fixture as well. And from the very first kind of minute, the opening exchanges, that big seminal hit, that the 2 second rows, David Toner goes up high on Retallick, and then James Ryan in behind, smashing him backwards. And it revealed a lot of things about the All Blacks in terms of when collisions aren't won, what their multi-phase is about.
For sure. From an All Black perspective, it was like, listen, for as much as it was 16-9, Ireland were more than 7 points better than them. And in terms of what actually happened with the game, you'd be scared looking at it, because like we talked about the All Black winning conditions last week, as it were, and we had win those collisions would be the first one and the operative one, and that didn't happen for them. We had
nullify Ireland's multi-phase, which they sort of did, although somewhat illegally, certainly in the first half.
Nullify the Irish multi-phase. We had like defend the kicking game, match them physically, obviously, and then the set piece, which obviously went wrong for them at the scrum, arrived for them towards the end of the lineup, but they couldn't get much profit there. But then obviously the key one that the All Blacks lean on was scoring tries, and in terms of the generators that they have to do that, you're talking about broken field play, chaos ball. They weren't given a whole lot of that. You're talking about turnover ball. They were given very little of that. And then you talk about quick ball off the base, the multi-phase that's worked for them this year, and they couldn't get any of that. And I think it was perhaps revealing a little bit, especially in the Rugby Championship, just how little their attack functions without it. When Retallick and Whitelock aren't going forward, just their inability to punch holes and create options. Ireland did a job on them defensively for sure, but they couldn't.
It was very noticeable that it was always All Black, kind of weary All Blacks forwards retreating into their attack shapes rather than advancing. Whereas Ireland's defensive line, the line speed was excellent throughout, and the width was good as well. Like Ireland were very selective in terms of when they competed at the breakdown, but in terms of the defensive breakdown, but they kind of fanned out across the pitch and covered that space very well and shooted out, like we said, out to in a lot, leaned on Ringrose in that channel to shut off the outside, which he did very well.
They didn't get outside very much.
They didn't get any chance.
They probably didn't look to do it enough. And that's probably part of the broader problem with this. Whatever they're trying to do in terms of changing their game, but generally speaking, around the park, once the collisions weren't happening, the quick ball wasn't happening, the attack play wasn't happening, then they were essentially for the most part they were starved of possession, because when they had the ball nothing was happening for them, and they were just, as soon as they were cancelled out, they were just trying chaos plays. They were trying little kicks in behind.
A lot of them.
To be honest, as much as this was a poor performance from them, that's not something that's unique to what's happened on Saturday evening. That's something that they've done quite a lot. As soon as things aren't going right for them, Barrett does lean to that little attacking kick, that speculative kick. Ireland were ready for it, as much as they did target Keith Earls earlier in the game, tried to chip it down his throat, but Earls again just
no dividends at all.
No dividends at all.
I don't know if they were targeting Earls or that they wanted Rico chasing. I don't know which it was.
No, I think it was Earls.
They
had isolated that Earls spends a lot of time up in the defensive line, and thought there might be space in behind him, but also off restarts they were kicking at him and kicking to him, and
they got no change.
Certainly, Rico, as good as Rico is, Ben Smith on the other side is better. So certainly, I don't think it was a Rico based decision. I think it was an Earls based decision, but it was a miscalculation, because Earls was fine. He didn't drop any of those, and outside of that, you saw no real creative play from them. And then the end result was that for most of the first half, which for me is where a lot of that damage was done, the Stockdale try then was very necessary for Ireland, because Ireland hadn't put the scoreboard pressure on them enough. But in terms of general play, in the first half they just ended up being starved of possession. And the big area that I think we haven't touched on, but we haven't mentioned fully, that we're going to keep coming back to for them, is the back row. And the degree to which they were bullied in the back row, and how big a problem it's going to be for them. Because their second rows were matched. They were outdone physically. They didn't get any of those.
There's a lot of obviously Brodie Retallick dropped the last ball and got smashed a few times and was targeted. I thought Whitelock was the more disappointing performer on the day. I actually thought Retallick had some big plays in, and it just kind of brought the dog out in him in that whole game. He was in a bit of a war of attrition with his opposite men, and he got a few line out steals himself, got one or two good turnovers.
He didn't get any breakdown turnovers.
I think he did get one.
Did he?
In the first half, I'm
not sure if he did.
Crucial one.
But I'm not sure if Retallick did. I'm not 100% sure, maybe I'm wrong, but for the most part what they've been really great at is targeting that ball in the contact. It's something that we looked at in the pre-game, that they might target as trying to attack that ball in the contact, and they really had none of it. Ireland's offensive breakdown was on point, and it was very, very physical, and the All Blacks couldn't stand up to it. And you look at the end of game stats, but even earlier in the game, the end of game, the possession stats ended up quite even, Ireland marginally on top, but for most of the game, before that last 20 minutes, Ireland had far greater possession stats and still had more turnovers, and it's an indictment. It's an indictment just of that area, and for a team like the All Blacks that thrives off turnover ball, to not be able to generate that.
Well, the one who was going for it most often, as far as I could tell, was Goodhue. Goodhue was in fugues trying to scrap for the ball, and it's like, fair play to him. I actually thought he had a creditable performance from 13, but that's not his job. I know
Sevilla got a couple.
Ardy got one.
He got two.
Did he get two in the breakdown?
Yes, he got two in the breakdown.
Fair play to him. He did well. Squire went off injured after 30 minutes. The physicality the Irish team brought in the first half was fairly phenomenal. But it's a case in point of, like, I know a few pundits have highlighted it, but like, obviously no one's going to replace McCaw, right? No. McCaw was an exceptional once in a generation type player, and what was interesting was that he was in the mould of the quintessential number 7, and what they're lacking now is an out and out number 7. It feels like Ardy Sevilla is a big all action player. He makes plays, but I don't know if he dominates that, like the defensive breakdown as well. I don't think he leads that as well. And then when you're looking at Squire as well, like, what's his role there? He seems to be there to tackle quite a lot, doesn't get a lot of turnovers at breakdown time, is he kind of there to fill Jerome Kaino's shoes? Because he's not. Like Kaino, the physicality that he managed to bring, like people forget just how strong that All Black team were when they had that back row. And like as such, Kieran Reid had one of the worst showings you'll ever see out of him. We do have our suspicion. I suspect that he was hurt by the way when he went down after a collision with Peter O'Mahony in the first half. Just having looked at it again, it looked like O'Mahony's that kind of guy that it looks like to hit him is to feel it and be sore. Like he's that kind of dude. But he did kind of brace his elbows, and Kieran Reid's loose arm kind of smacked him, and he seemed to get a stinger from it. And from there, his hands just seemed to be gone for the rest of the game. But I'm just wondering, like when he was in as part of that other back row, that great back row with Kaino and McCaw, he was hanging out a lot in the wings, and a lot of his when he was winning World Player of the Year or getting nominated for it, he was shortlisted for it. He was scoring a load of tries on the wide channels and kind of operating in a very Southern Hemisphere number 8 kind of typical style. Whereas in recent years, sure, he's donned the captain's armband, but he's also moved more around the fringes. He's having to pick up the pieces a lot of the time, both in defensive breakdowns and in terms of hard yards carrying. He's finding himself just around one out from the ruck, trying to put his head down. And I just think the balance is not there. We were calling last week for maybe Matt Todd, like who was the understudy obviously to McCaw. He's in the same mould of player. Yeah. I'm not arguing that he's not the same caliber of player. I don't think he is. And I would have liked, like I've just been calling for it for a while. Even when Sam Cane was fit, I kind of wanted Matt Todd in there because I think he's a more out and out open side, and he'll just create more space for the other players.
It was poor on-field calling that they ended up bringing him on so late into the picture, and he probably could have made a difference because that was such an area of there was such a problematic area.
Ireland were like the multi-phase game is great credit to them, and Ireland do play it better than most going through the phases. Yeah. But Australia had highlighted, because Australia are elite in that level, if few others, but their two breakdown operators, particularly Pocock, there are steals there for them, and France exploited that fact against us in the Six Nations as well. A few teams have demonstrated that is a way to get Ireland. If we're setting up our pods just one out from the ruck to try and smash over the line, if we do break that line and get a little bit ahead of our support, there is a second there where you can get that ball if you have a forager on the pitch.
First test against Australia was a great example of that from David Pocock, and the All Blacks, like, they don't actually have a Pocock, and they didn't target us right either. They seem to just think that again, like one of the great points that we made about the All Blacks, or that you made about the All Blacks, like that Steve Hansen was saying last year when the Lions were talking about going up front and beating them. You know, Steve Hansen was laughing and making the point like I think you're a fool if you think you're going to come here and smash us. You know, that's a naive way to come to New Zealand and play. And he was right on that occasion. It was the first test. The Lions went and did that, and the All Blacks, you know, out muscled them and went to their tries and shocked them and scored their tries. But conversely, coming to Dublin, and as much as you back your Brodies and your Whitelocks, coming to Dublin
to run over the Irish, the first phase of attack was very interesting because it was so narrow from them, and they weren't
the first drive almost when they got R22.
It was the first and only time they passed our 5 metre line. They didn't get anywhere near it from there on, and it was like, it was just remarkable because it didn't look like an All Black multi-phase. Typically it was much more physical and direct than that. And then eventually what happened was like it was actually a 2-man turnover, although there were hints of it a few phases before. It was something we mentioned in the previous podcast when we were talking about both Exeter and Munster, where they were just going through phase after phase after phase after phase, and eventually ball gets dropped. What happened there? They kept going phase, wouldn't go wide, and eventually it was Josh and CJ were in over the ball, turnover, exit, and you're done.
And that was an example of silly, essentially white line fever when they got in the 22,
which is so rare to associate with that with an All Black team.
And one of the strengths of the All Black team this year has been like less. They're, you know, one of the things that we revel in talking about is when they make a line break, they score a try from anywhere, and there has been that this year. You know, being clinical and almost not having that much multi-phase in the opposition 22. But they have brought it into their game. But one of the key things when you look at what they're doing is they do get that go forward ball. They do like their 3-second ruck ball, and when they get that, they go wide. So they do, off first couple of phases, lean on your Retalix and your reads, etc. around those fringes, and they do look to get that quick ball, and then they look to move it, and they just weren't able to do that against Ireland, and they didn't react well.
One of the points we made was Crotty and the gaps possibly between Sexton and Aki that just never materialised for him. It never really happened for him during the day, and much of that was due to the forwards just getting beat up, and he was only ever getting shovel passes. But I think he had a few opportunities.
There's a reason that, like, in describing this game, there's a distinction with difference between Ireland physically dominating and dominating up front, because they did dominate up front, but I think physically dominating is a better way to put it, because their backs also dominated. Gary Ringrose and Aki defensively were very strong, and as much as the Aki Sexton axis struggled last week and did give Argentina opportunities, they shorted up this week. Sexton was huge as well on D. He was actually in Ringrose's position, having to shoot a couple of times, and he did a great job of doing that. But they probably didn't look to go outside enough, and they probably didn't adjust well, the All Blacks, and paid for it. As far as Ireland are concerned, basically it couldn't have gone better in that first half. The line out was shored up with Dev. Bestie was playing well. Keane, Healy and Furlong got the better of their respective props.
Loads of carries from Keane as well. It was
Tuinukuafe had a really tough time in the scrum. His first, I would say.
It wasn't just the scrum. And this is it, like, I think his scrum suffered on account of he was targeted a few times, and there was one in particular, one of my favourite carries of the game was from Josh van der Fleer, where we turned around the short side on one of the first forays into their 22, and he just, like, Tuinukuafe was kind of ball watching on Marmion, and then it came out and Josh just went straight for his chest to chest and just, like, bounced him off, and Tuinukuafe just looked shocked by the physicality and the pace of the carry. And his tackling was suspect at times. He was actually a bit of a weak chink in defence, and then his scrum ended up suffering as well. Like, Tighe went after him. There were hints of illegality about all the binding on that, and it was actually it was not until the two substitution front rows were on that we actually had a set scrum. But
the scrums were hilarious viewing in the first half, because he had on one side just very technical scrummaging going on between Healy and Franks, and Healy getting the better of it, getting that perfect body position, very low, just shaped to drive
him
through.
For strength as well.
And then on the other side, just wild things going on, and Tighe ended up basically lifting Tuinukuafe up, but Tuinukuafe in turn trying to drive through the middle into the hooker and just getting turned into the air. There was one when he had Tighe sort of wrapped up and turned on the inside, and Tighe just disengaged from the scrum,
under him,
almost bound on the chest, and picked him up, and obviously didn't get called. It wasn't on the ref side, but it was just cracking madness in the scrum that you love to see.
You just see his big moustache bouncing out of the scrum. It was glorious. It was his first really real kind of introduction to what Northern Hemisphere scrummaging's about, I guess, because it's like he's looked very mighty impressive in coming up all the way through, even in Super Rugby, but there is distinction with difference in the scrum game up here. Just a difference of emphasis, and I think that's partly, like, if you're talking breakdown as well, just even when you're looking at consistency in refs calls, and a lot of times what Southern Hemisphere refs see is very different and contrasted to Northern Hemisphere refs, I think is kind of bleeding in a bit in this All Black side's kind of just what they're thinking in terms of where they target. Like, they never really scrum for penalties, which is not really what they want to be doing anyway. They want to attack off scrums, but surely you have to recognise that scrumming for penalties is part of the game. This is the same thing with the drop goal thing, and that, like, that drop goal that Bowden kicked, technically a very good drop goal, fair play to him, was over 40 metres. Why though? Like, I'm going, like, you have a penalty advantage, maybe a bump. It's actually, that's something that we used to see a lot of at international level in the Six Nations, like over a decade ago. It would always be like, penalty advantage. 5 years ago, even 5 years ago. It was just like penalty advantage, drop back into the pocket, drop goal, hey, 10 feels good. But it's like, why? And it was actually Jamie Heaslip on one of the feeds of one of the commentary teams, he was on Channel 4, was making that point, because I know it's one that it really irks Brian O'Driscoll and a few of those Leinster players as well, when it's like, you have a penalty advantage, go for the 50-50, try and get a try, and then sure, you can always come back and kick three then.
The three over.
It's like, it's a bit of an ego trip to be slotting over a drop goal there for no good reason.
And another weird play from the All Blacks.
Well, they never kicked to touch once in the whole game.
No, they didn't. Instead of opting for the points, that's dead right. There was a lot weird about them, and we're going to get into again the identity crisis that perhaps they're going through, and the issues that this team is having as compared to the team that won the World Cup a few years ago, and just how many weaknesses Steve Hansen has to fix in the year or the 9 months coming before the World Cup. From Ireland's perspective, it was a massive performance again. You look at the scrum, you look at the line out. In terms of their keys to victory, they more or less got them all. They more or less ticked every box, especially in that first half. They just overwhelmed them physically. They held the ball for very long periods of time. They had well over 60% possession in that first half, I think, and they kept going through their multi-phase. The offensive breakdown was so sharp as well. They were, first of all, they were winning the contacts, and second of all, they were just getting through the ball. There was no hint of a turnover or even slow ball for Marmion. There was no struggling happening there with Marmion at all. And again, even with that, they had the territory game was on point. Every time there was a scrum, they were getting some penalties. There were some cute kicks in there, some contestables that Ireland were winning a lot of, and the All
Johnny
Blacks
Sexton left-footed chip with penalty advantage.
Yeah, the All Blacks were kicking it back to us then, but not as well, and we were just getting a lot of set plays to work off, and then in the right parts of the field.
Yeah, I liked some of the variation off 10 as well. There were a lot of the shape that Ireland typically adopt with the round the back pass, but we weren't looking for that. We were kind of either coming back inside or just popping flat pass.
There was one glorious sequence, and I wish I could remember who ended up getting the ball, but it was when James Ryan got the ball,
switched out to Toner, and then switched back to CJ. CJ who had a bit of space there.
It was the whole team converged on James Ryan, who 90% of the time would carry in that scenario and would go through, but just a little out the back door flick to Dev Toner, who was just running away from that space and running away from those into the space away from the defenders, and popped it to CJ. It was who charged through, and it was just an example of the on the feet thinking that was going around, that was just winning Ireland contacts time and time again.
Yes, indeed.
And that it was just an absolutely wonderful show, and most of it was with ball in hand. Without ball in hand, then the set piece as well, scrum was brilliant, but the line out crucially worked for Ireland with ball and
tremendously well. Good variation in it as well. He threw more, sent more to Peter O'Mahony while he was on there. Apparently
Dev is more than Dev. One of the things I love about Dev as a line out caller is just there's absolutely no ego to him. He sends it to him a lot, but he's always looking for the right option, and he sends it to other receivers, I think, more than any other line out caller at the top level.
He just has that good savvy about him. It gives us an assuredness thing, but it was, as you pointed out, it was kind of like Emperor has no clothes when he went off, and then Peter O'Mahony had to go off, and then Rory Best was off, and there was no line out. The line out was gone all of a sudden, and it was like Geordie Murphy getting it. I think Retallick and Whitelock both got one steal each. But it was just, there's less calm about it without Dev in there, and that's what he kind of brings to that set piece. And for a team like Ireland who launch so many attacks off set piece, and the game winning try itself came off a beautifully executed off the top from a line out play. It's
from Ireland's general perspective, I think, we talked last week about the 5 sort of key areas that they have to dominate. They have to be solid or win the set piece. They could win the scrum, be solid at line out, win those physical contacts, which they did, and then some. Play in the All Black half, which they did, and hold the ball, which they did. All 4 of those were perfect in the first half, and then obviously the 5th was scoring tries,
which is where we're going to put it's a blemish on the record.
Well, with the accumulation of all 4 of those, like to the nth degree, in the sense that it was just
I think it was
such dominance.
I think it was 70-30 possession wise at half.
But all over the park there was such dominance for Ireland. Like, as much as it is the All Blacks, but like their inability to score tries in that first half. And listen, a huge part of what happened there was that the All Blacks gave away penalties. Ireland on the 50-50, on the penalty advantage, decided to opt for the 50-50, and it didn't come off, so they went back and kicked over the 3 points. That happened, I think,
couple of times. But then the third time, which, like, there's an argument that the card should have been produced there and then, because, well, certainly there was one incident that I think it was O'Driscoll was highlighting, because it's another bugbear of him, and I'm inclined to agree. Sam Whitelock, when he killed the ball when we already had penalty advantage, if you recall that one, and he was just lying on top of it, like, that's surely cardable straight away. Like, it doesn't have to be an accumulation, doesn't need to be a warning. If you're on penalty advantage in the 22 and then you give away another cynical penalty, a blatant one, that should be cardable straight away. However, it wasn't, so you just play on. And then it was interesting that Rory Best called the last 3-pointer of the first half
and argued with Johnny about it.
Johnny Sexton did not want to do that. He got the sense that if we took either a scrum or a line out, we'd get cards and tries.
Yeah.
And it's something that Leinster have been doing so well all season and all last season, has been recognising that this is the end of the first half, let's score a try. This is the beginning of the second half, let's score a try. And it's
the Ulsterman wasn't having it. And listen, it was like, as much as it was, we won the game, we beat the All Blacks, this is fantastic, that was a dead wrong call. And it was one of the conditions that, I'm not sure if I said it on the podcast, but I said it a lot last week, is like that's a terrible losing circumstance for Ireland when they're dominating the game and yet they're only having however many points accumulated, and then they get a penalty on top of loads of All Black cynical play. The All Blacks get a team warning. They're presented with the opportunity to stick it in the corner, have a go for 5 points, and be playing against 14 men, and they don't take it and chip over the 3. It's forgotten about, balls in the other end of the field. All Blacks definitely aren't giving away another penalty in their red zone for at least 10 minutes in the game, and they get away with it. And that was essentially what Ireland let them do, and that is a concern for sure. But
it was something I cited as a major concern, and in fact I was concerned at half time. I think we were texting back and forth, and it was like I was very worried that if we put in a big chunk of time, it played all the rugby, smashed them repeatedly, and only saw a 9-point return for it, I'd be very worried. And as such, come half time, I was very, very worried and a bit annoyed, because I thought that call was very questionable, and I thought we may have let them off the hook. I was also convinced that they would score tries, but the one distinction with difference was it was All Blacks going down. Like, if you remember the games a few years ago and stuff, it would be desperation from us and then a few of our boys down, and the breaks in play always featured us. There were breaks in play of that first half, and it was Kieran Reid who was down. It was I think Artie Sevilla looked a bit injury. O'Mahony got a knock as well, of course. Like, Ireland's game plan is just never not going to take a physical toll. This is why it's like we were postulating, it's like, if Ireland were to win a World Cup, how many of their squad would they have to go through playing this kind of game, because it's so physical compared to any other team. It's definitely, like, this has been a trend. If you're talking about, we were talking about like England and their mystery shutting up shop, spending 60 minutes of a game not scoring, and that being a repeated trend of the year. We're talking about All Blacks. They've spotted a few different kind of trends this year that are concerning. Ireland as well, like, this had shades of it, as well as having shades of the 2013 game that obviously they marched all the way up the pitch, but it was kind of a contrast to that with that last play, because there was the fields of Athlone. There was no hushed silence. The boys were sticking to their systems. But it also, like, if you think back to the France game in Six Nations, yes, there was the drop goal, but why were we in the position to need that drop goal? What had happened in that game was we were dominant in every facet of the game, but we'd only got a 6-point buffer for all that, because we couldn't break them down and score a try of our own. And then Teddy Tama breaks the line, scores a try, and then we were that close to a completely different year. It also, the Wales game the week after it, we dominated that game in every facet of the stat book, but Wales had a strike rate that was comparable to ours, and so stayed in the game.
Was not comparable to ours, rather. That was better.
In terms of, like, it took us so many phases to score a try, and then what would happen is Wales would just reply with another try, and then we have to spend another 10 minutes going again to get ours.
And listen, and like, from an Irish perspective, it's great to see the D holding up like that, but it is true that the degree to which we have to dominate to get a marginal return is poor. I do love the stock plays that Joe comes up with. They're great,
those strike plays, and that try that was beautiful.
It was a beautiful try, and it's an example of, it's a wonderful mould of Schmidt ball and then off the cuff ball. Joe Schmidt's always had those plays in his game, those line break generators. It was a good option off first phase. It was kind of hilarious it's been broken down to death. Brian O'Driscoll has a great breakdown of it on Off the Ball. If you give that a look, he summarises it better than any of us could. But it's just an amusing shape when you watch it from overhead, and the All Blacks just come rushing out.
And it kind of looks like one of those Rugby 07 things where, like, the AI and the computer, all the team are drifting in one direction and then drift after the ball.
Firing up. Dane Coles, more than any of them, comes firing up on Johnny, and they're all just shooting on that outside, really looking to blast the Irish out of it on the play, and they just get caught with their pants down. Then we go the other way, they get completely caught out. Ben Smith makes this foolish decision to run up and cover Rory Best instead of the backfield, and Stockdale shows the class of having a guy who can make plays on the wing, and it's crucial to adding to our try scoring abilities. I don't know where we would be this year without Stockdale. I think Stockdale has been one of the big impact makers on Schmidt.
Would we have won the Six Nations, would we have won all those games without all those tries he's been
well,
providing?
as much as you big up your and rightly so, you big up your Carneys and your Earls for defensive solidity and just general smarts around the
Carney
field.
being the like quintessential goalkeeper fullback in World Rugby. He's phenomenal, and his performance was remarkable as well, given that he was straight back in there.
But you need a guy who can make plays, and that's Jacob. And it was a massive moment for Ireland. It's great to see those strike plays in them. It would be nice to see a few more tries from them, and maybe it was just circumstance in the sense that they did kick it in the corner in the first half. The All Blacks did cynically fell, and then they did opt for the 3 points, which could prove a mistake in future games, but for the time being, it proved right.
Well,
they got their 10-point lead,
it's hard
and they
to
protected
nitpick
it
when we just beat the All Blacks and held them tryless. Fair play to Andy Farrell as well, because that his defensive system has kept them tryless twice now, which is a lot.
In fact, 4 times. Well, not tryless 4 times, but 4 victories.
4 victories over them. But it's rare enough that the All Blacks are held tryless, and one of them was the Lions, and one of them was this one.
And they obviously beat them with England as well, and beat them, I think, 3 wins and 1 draw with the Lions. That's right.
Which is it's a decent return, and he's well on their radar. But it was just a joy to watch, really. Like, you could go through and name everyone. I think the back row were seminal in terms of thing, as well as the second row stepping up. James Ryan is a phenomenal lock. He has serious arguments for best lock in the world. Proper arguments for breakthrough player of the year, though. Come on now, I don't know who's
that was
who's
a crazy
not
nomination slip
for that.
They've been proven wrong on that one,
indeed. But he's been stepping up to every challenge, and I still don't know how he manages to make those yards in the contact the way he does. It seems very, very unique.
Peter O'Mahony as well.
Peter O'Mahony's performance. We were concerned about our scramble defence based on the Argentina showing, but we were some of the chops shown that play to intercept that ball. Another one of those speculative kicks, but it only takes one to bounce into Ben Smith's hands for it to be try time.
Ultimately, I think it was that contact area and that ability on the ball to scramble that was the difference maker, especially in that first half for dominance. But then again, in the second half, in just terms of the All Blacks did get their possession, they did get their chance to run at Ireland, and the difference maker was Ireland defended the 10-point lead. And listen, cracking game. We're happy out.
Delighted.
What a win. What a win. And it shakes up the world. Steve Hansen says we're the number 1 team in the world. In truth, that gets decided next year.
Yes, indeed. It's all kind of academic. I did enjoy the fact that, and it wasn't really picked up on here, but it was like the way he stated that was going like, they're probably favourites. You can make them favourites, and we'll see how they handle all that. And I'm just like, does he want us to handle all that? Is that what he wants? And for us to mishandle it?
He's got his own things to be handling.
I know. I do suspect that this is an Irish team that aren't too vexed by the favourites tag, because they're a bunch of Leinster and Munster and a few and like even Connacht have won a tournament.
They've got no issue holding that tag. That's an old school thing. The only issue that comes with it is opposition teams playing their best game against you. And Ireland are gonna. There's some learnings in the Six Nations, but for now it's a joyous day and the best year in Irish rugby history. So we celebrate that.
And on a side note, Johnny Sexton for World Player of the Year. Come on now, World Rugby. Listen, what's the argument?
As far as it's hard to get invested in those awards. Remember 2009 and McCaw,
yes.
I mean, could have been Bod. Probably should have been Bod. Could have been Foy Dupree. Certainly wasn't McCaw. But it wouldn't surprise me to see them give it to Barrett for the 3rd year in a row. But it feels like it has to be Johnny.
How could you do that? Barrett came, he didn't come off, but Mwanga came off the bench at 54 minutes in that game to change it up because it wasn't working. It's like,
and that's as far as the Barrett Sexton debate. We are going to wrap up this now, but as far as the Barrett Sexton debate's concerned, Barrett's a great playmaker. He does lots of cool things and scores great tries, but he doesn't do nearly as much for the All Black offense as Sexton does for Ireland's. Everything that Ireland do in offense goes through Sexton and is called by Sexton.
He's
the quarterback
player.
So I just think he's the best 10 in the world. I think he's a phenomenon. I think he's a new breed of 10, and I think Farrell is a similar kind of player, but not on that level yet.
Not yet, but I'm curious to see what Farrell in his 30s looks like, because this Johnny in his 30s thing, because it's the kind of game like Barrett has pace at the moment. He has blinding, blistering pace.
He does.
When he reaches 30, is he going to have the same blinding, blistering pace? And when he doesn't, is he going to be a world-beating All Black number 10?
Now, that's the thing about the All Blacks is what they do is they just replace them.
I know,
when they lose him. Nick Speed, look at Julian Sevilla. He was the golden boy, and he had a couple of off years, and he's gone to Toulon.
Yeah. Well, I think there is. I think I've mused on it before, but there's definitely a market for that 10 who's just seen a lot. This is actually when Dan Carter, but even when we were talking a few weeks ago about Danny Cipriani and how much he's come on as a player now that he's reached 30 and stuff, and he seems to just, he still has the talent, but some of those crazy notions that come with talent in youth, it seems seem to have been slightly curtailed, and he's seen
just
a bit
in the
more.
sense that, like, I remember the last time I tried that crazy pass and threw an intercept.
Exactly right. I remember that time when that game that we call just enough of those experiences in the bank and experiences
for sure.
winning them.
Experience matters for 10, but you're seeing now in Sexton is just this fine wine of a
wonderful
player.
Thing. And Marmion did very well. Granted, with the pack giving him that kind of platform, it was easy enough. But it was like, it's good to see that. Like, and even Luke McGrath came on and did creditably as well. Made a fair few good tackles when he came on. Like, the halfback department, as much as Murray is one of the best in the world, certainly the best box kicker in the world, which is why Marmion was coming in for criticism about his box kicking. But it's like,
actually, it's one of the areas, like, in terms of criticisms of Ireland, the main one would be just that lack of clinical finishing the game when it needs to be finished. But the other one was the exit was actually, for all of the dominating territory and possession, the exit was pretty poor. It was made up for by the defence. And just one last thing before I'd like to mention before we wrap it up was that the Ireland's defensive play that shut the All Blacks down from going out wide. Two key men in that, especially in the first half. Inside, shutting them down on the inside, stopping the forwards, linking up with CJ, constantly coming out of the line. Did the same thing against Argentina. He was huge. He had his best game in a green jersey, and defensively he was huge. He just stopped them from going out wide. And then Gary Ringrose as well, making reads a couple of times when the All Blacks looked dangerous. He was the man who shut them down.
For one time in the first half where actually James Ryan, if I'm going to put a little bit of bold mark on it, was when that little surreal moment where he's watching the ref thinking that we were getting a call, and it was like, no, knock on green, play on, and he has to go and double back and turn.
The ball was behind him.
And
against the All Blacks.
It's like, no. But it was actually Gary who made that tackle on Kieran Reid, who shut that down and allowed the defence to come up and close the door then. So it's like these little plays. I actually thought ball in hand, it didn't quite happen for him. And I thought there were little opportunities for Goodhue as well, which didn't quite come. It was a good battle between the two of them, actually. I thought
he looked good with ball in hand. He didn't make any breaks or anything, but he had that slight feet that always caused him trouble.
Indeed, this is what he finds soft shoulders. His is an amazing way to do it. But no, it was a wonderful game, and Ireland are in good shape. Really, it has to be said. Looking like it's as much as you're thinking, it's a year out, and a lot of talk about not peaking at the right time and stuff. There's no argument that this isn't positive. Like, having another win in the bank against the All Blacks is just good confidence building for all of these guys. More learned about the squad, and it's just keep winning ways is surely a recipe for success. It just kind of keeps the options open as far as the World Cup. You're not really going to the World Cup on a wing and a prayer. You're going on evidence. Things like wins.
It's a cracking win, a massive for Ireland going forward, and we're delighted with it. So. The next thing that we wanted to talk about, that was just a little building point on that Ireland, on that whole Ireland issue heading towards the World Cup next year, where they are, what they're feeling at the moment. One of the issues that we had really focused on, especially in what we're calling last season of the podcast, before our little whatever month break that it was.
It was a year.
It was a year. 12 months. One of the things that we had talked about, and that you actually mentioned earlier on, is, like you were saying, how many players need to get injured for Ireland to win. How can Ireland maintain that kind of intensity that they're playing with?
It's a brutal game plan that we're operating with.
And with this performance, the two big issues that have been highlighted about Ireland, that physical exertion that seems to tire out and injure players, and then the depth that was so prevalent for its lacking. For how it was lacking in the last World Cup, and I think this match was a perfect little test for both of them, in the sense that you had Henshaw missing, you had Murray missing, you had Sean O'Brien, you had Dan Levy called out in the last second, and then you still had all of these experienced physical test level players to call in.
And if you're talking about the back row, there were people like Ruddock and Tyke Byrne who weren't even in the squad. Even you go to Tommy O'Donnell in Munster's been having a great season. There's a lot of depth in that area. There's more second rows around. There was a lot of argument before the Argentina game about who goes where, and I've heard commenters suggesting many different ones. Like you can literally make good cases for any of the combinations.
On balance right now they got it right in the sense that you need James Ryan because he's James Ryan, and you need Dev for the line out.
Indeed.
And Tev was brilliant around the park as well. But the big thing for that is that they still played well. The other big thing about it is in terms of physical exertion, as much as Peter O'Mahony maybe killed himself a bit, with all the depth, they have the ability to mix teams around, and they do have an extra layer of fitness that they didn't have. Most noticeably in 2013, you talked about the contrast of those two games between
Ireland were shattered at the end, and their line splintered. As a result,
broken men when Crotty crossed to win the All Blacks that match, and on this occasion it was Retallick who was a broken man as he dropped that ball, and the All Blacks were.
It was a marked difference.
It was a wonderfully gratuitous shot at the end of Napo Laulala just on his knee, looking out in shock and horror,
soaking it all in. The announcer went,
they went back to it twice. The shot of Napo, then wide shot, then Napo again.
That is a bit gratuitous. It's a bit mean spirited.
But it was illustrative of that extra change. One of the other things, like the All Blacks did get tries against us in that game. And there was, like, as much as the Peter O'Mahony snatch from Ben Smith, which is a great shot, and it's great that they go back to the moment that for me looked so typical of the All Blacks was when they did get that quick ruck ball and Barrett splintered the line, and it was just a typical Barrett try that was about to happen before our eyes.
But it was a typical Josh van der Fleer tackle that happened to stop him.
With how many minutes going? How many minutes left? 10?
70 minutes. He's a machine. This is it. I love Josh van der Fleer. Huge fan. I was actually calling for him to be picked instead of Dan Levy anyway.
You were.
I knew he wouldn't disappoint. He's a machine, and he does all the same. In terms of a stat operator, he kind of delivers in a similar way, like similar numbers to Levy, but he does it in such a different way. And this is where I've boiled it down to between those two as Josh is the machine, Levy is the monster. And this is where I think Levy may be in for more injuries than Josh, purely because of the way he flings his body around, whereas I think Josh just picks great angles, and his is just a collection of very, very smart plays in a row, and he has the fitness to back them all up. And he's not the most physical guy, he's not the heaviest guy, but he's certainly fit and he's certainly mobile, and he just knows rugby.
Strong, but the making that tackle was so key. And to be fair, as well as Josh, it was happening all over the pitch. The little plays that needed to be made were being made. And even in the last phase, they did make that 50-metre gain. There were those 2013 comparisons. They were moving the ball a bit more, which was good to see from them. But Ireland, after initially losing shape a little bit, they got their shape back around on the 22, and then from there, All Blacks had nothing. The All Blacks had absolutely nothing, and
they were pedestrian and left to right.
And Ireland were just, the defensive line was still as aggressive as it had been earlier in the game, and they just couldn't break them down. And from Ireland's perspective going forward, I think that's massive. I mean, that's the biggest shift that Joe has made perhaps in the team, is just that ability to maintain that. That because it's less about the passion and the moment and everything else. That's
the other point I was going to make, is they seem to be removing themselves from an emotional high team. Now, doubtless that was an emotional performance that involved a lot of investment and exertion on that front, but it's not just that.
No, at all. Everything that's it's Joe Schmidt's plan is bubbling in your head. You know, if you're not back in shape on time, that Joe's gonna give out to you, drop you, I don't know what, humiliate you in Monday morning. All of these things that are weighing on people's heads, but it's Joe. They're playing like Joe's machine, and they're also getting
those results. So this is it. It's not. I think it's even moved past all that Monday morning. We're going to get
I don't think it has.
No, well, like in terms of it's not the scare tactic fully, but they're talking about a team that has confidence in their coach. They know that Schmidt wants them back in line, doing this and rising thing. They also know that history has shown them that if they do what Joe wants them to do, they win the game.
That's true too.
So it's like, if I'm not doing what Joe wants me to do, we're going to lose the game.
Yes.
But conversely. So it just kind of forces your hand.
All of those humiliating, and they're just maintaining it. And as far as that being the main concern ahead of the World Cup, you saw the last World Cup, everything was building heavily, the games were getting tougher and tougher and tougher, and Ireland broke down in the French game pretty early on. But you've seen it in Grand Slams as well, I mean, attempted Grand Slam runs from Ireland, how at some point the physical energy they have to exert takes its toll, and the boys start falling over and it all becomes disjointed. I think they're going to be a lot there. I think in fact they're supremely confident that isn't going to happen this time. Just the way it's shaped out for them. They have Scotland to start with and then Japan, so it's like one big physical shift, like one big proper test match against Scotland that they'll back themselves to get right, then a simmer down period of some other games where they can have other combinations and other guys to come in, then the big quarter final, and then they're going to back their depth, whoever gets injured in that quarter final, to assemble a team that is going to be able to play in the exact same way with the exact same energy in the semi-final. And then if they do that, they're going to be in a final. So whatever gets them in the World Cup, if they don't win it, I don't think it's going to be that massive issue of depth and physical exertion,
which is what he's been citing since the previous World Cup as the main problem. And boy, has he taken some strides towards fixing it. So it's great to see the progress in it. Like, Ireland are just a team on the up, and have been for probably close to a decade, if not more. When you think about like the RFU's handling of professionalism, and then the golden generation of Brian O'Driscoll in that era, a team that were capable of mixing it up on their day with the best in terms of talent. They could open the best teams in the world up. They knew this about themselves, and were always kind of scratching their head when it went wrong eventually in World Cup time. Now we're looking at like the next generation that has been inspired by them, and there's like many kids playing rugby in the country. The scene is as healthy as it's ever been, and as such the depth has just naturally, very organically kind of been fixed by just having the academies produce enough players and solving some problems.
And I think that would probably have happened anyway. You're seeing what's happening in Leinster and all, but what Schmidt has done such a great job of is blooding enough of them and doing it in such a way that whoever comes into the side, whether it's even Tommy O'Donnell, as you were saying, like, they're going to go in and know their role and do the same things that Josh and Levy have been doing. And like, obviously the best players are going to be on the pitch, and they are going to be able to do things that perhaps the guys further down might not be able to do. But as far as around the pitch, Joe, I think, is satisfied that he can create a fully functional, dangerous, world-beating test side with any number of injuries at the moment. My opinion, with the definite exception of Sexton. But other than that,
because I think Carberry is a fine 10, but fundamentally changes the way the game is played for us. Well, it's a good mix it up off the bench option, but if he has to start the test,
it's just the way our phase play is built, is all around Sexton, and Sexton calling everything. And like you say, with the experience, Joey, like as much as he's definitely trying to soak in everything Sexton's doing just in case it happens, like, there's just no way he's going to be able to do what Sexton does if Sexton goes down. It's as unfortunate as it is, there's no way. If Sexton went down, it would be the most detrimental injury to our chances. But if you had a fit Murray, there's a way of changing the game and doing other things. Fit Murray and a fit Henshaw and a fit Ringrose, you could do things, certainly. But as far as anything outside Sexton, Joe's feeling confident that injuries aren't going to cost them, and that physical exertion, like, as much they like to play with power and they like to play with explosiveness, and because you know that Tig can go powerful. Tig doesn't have to go powerful for 80 minutes, he can go powerful for 20, and then James Ryan comes into the game with a bit more. Like, there's so many different options and so many different combinations that I think they're confident it isn't going to take its toll and kill that first team pack, and they are going to interchange new guys like Ty Byrne into it. So they're just very, very confident, and as much as we have that issue with them scoring tries, that aspect of Irish rugby seems to have been, and a long bugbear for them seems to have been solved.
Which is positive. It's kind of like, what can I say? It is all positives on a weekend like this, and there's one more game for them against the US before wrapping up for the Six Nations, and it's been remarkable, a remarkable year. And the only citation is that little question mark over just converting those chances slightly quicker. I think it was Andy Dunn putting it a bit more economy in attack would be good. It's a good way of phrasing it. It's just like, it doesn't take every team 20 million phases to score a try, lads, come on. And it doesn't, it shouldn't. Like, although
conversely, and this is where I move on, but the other way that they might look at it is that it has been a big help for them just draining the life out of a team by holding on to the ball for so long. This is true.
It's a big part of them, the pressure that they bring, and the tangible effect it had on the All Blacks. There are question marks over whether the All Blacks were tired. I know that's being put front, as it always is in a November loss. But
listen, this was not like we didn't catch them cold. They planned for this game. They wanted to win this game, and they were completely flat.
They were just found wanting.
That's a good way to pivot into the next kind of point that we're talking about, which is, like, the All Blacks in general. I mean, there are serious issues with this All Black team that simply weren't there 4 years ago, that have been exposed this year. And
I think but it's not just this year. We were questioning. Well, like, I think if we go back into the history, the annals of this podcast, but before the Lions tour, we were annoyed at the selection of Gatland to do it again initially, I think, and
correct.
Annoyed at the inclusion of Ben Teo at the expense of Gary Ringrose.
# justice for Bod.
Yes. Well, that's way back into the annals of history, but like, just a few things that stood out to us as problems, and we were also just singing the All Blacks praises, saying, nah, look, if we're going down there to physically dominate them, we're going to be found absolutely wanting if we're picking a side to go and play Warren Ball plus Farrell. And it's like, no, that's not going to work. And then it was a bit like, that was the team that pretty much went out in the first test, and that was pretty much what happened. But then what we saw from the All Blacks subsequently was, obviously, the second test, it was a crazy Sunnyvale play that seemed to kind of change the course of it. And even then, with Sexton and Farrell, it still took a lot of effort to get that win. But the third test was remarkable, because the All Blacks just didn't look like themselves at all. It looked much more like a Northern Hemisphere game than a Southern Hemisphere one. And that seems to have marked a point in time when they've got a bit too good into their analysis. It feels like you've been making this point that as soon as they start doing homework on teams, and like it was often an adage where it's like, it is so much easier to beat the All Blacks when you have their respect.
Yes.
When they're giving you your propers and doing prep for it. It just seems to take some of their in the moment play away from them, and their heads up play away from them, which is what when they put 70 routinely on a team, which they invariably do. Like we saw England at the weekend struggling in the first half against Japan. That never happens with New Zealand. New Zealand never struggled with Japan. They didn't the week before, because it's just they firmly believe they're better than them and they're going to beat them. And as well as doing their propers as far as speaking in a respectful manner within the media and being a proper, lovely representative of the sport, which they are as an institution, once they like the notion of them taking a 2-week training camp out of Super Rugby to prep for the England and the Ireland game, and then just the way they came out to play both of those games, like
crazy.
Watching them play in Twickenham, granted in the rain, but Bowden Barrett kicking it. And then there was a very telling interview with Barrett where he was during the week, where he was talking about how it's always challenging for a Kiwi fly half to come up to the Northern Hemisphere and have to play a different style of rugby. And it's like, that's something you'd never hear from an All Black player. Ever. It's like, you don't change to play the style of rugby. We play All Black rugby and you lose.
Yeah.
That's what I associate with the All Blacks anyway, speaking as an Irishman who's been whooped by them constantly. And it's like, no, there's no hint of them changing their style of play to accommodate you.
Well, certainly not Ireland. I mean, they have had their bugbears in the past with the English, precisely because of that reason. Ireland were never included in the club of teams they took seriously until just now. But certainly now that they are, I mean, they won that game way easier than perhaps you ever would have thought possible. Looking back in the day, I mean, some of those great Eddie O'Sullivan teams with O'Driscoll tries, and they really did try, but the All Blacks outplayed them. And that's what you look for from the All Blacks. There was a summer tour a few years back that England were playing the All Blacks in, and it was 15-all, I think was the score. A tie game, no tries in the game, and it was about 78 minutes. And I remember I was watching it with Dad, our father, and it was in the morning. You know him well. Yeah. And I was saying that for the camera. But it was about 78 minutes into the game, and the All Blacks got a penalty on the English 10, just out to the right hand side, basically out in front. A very makeable kick that probably would have won them the game. And Aaron Smith, little go-getter that he is, tapped and went. And Dad was like, "What the fuck? When the game is there to be won?" And he was going, "What are you doing, you bad? England are going to go get a result over there because you're an idiot." And they tapped and went. They put together, this was I think back in 2013 or something like that. They put together some extraordinary play and ended up getting a try on the right hand side. I think it would have been Corey Jane or Israel Dag or someone like that. Got the try in the corner, and they won the game 20 points to 15. And like they were saying at the end, they were kind of laughing about it, like, we hadn't scored a try in the game, and we just felt that we wanted to score a try in the game. And then they went and did it. And like it was that set of balls in them to do that. I think the Lions tour was a bit of a seminal moment for me. Like, if you look at the way I've been viewing the All Blacks pre-Lions tour, they were basically just invincible. They were just this tier above with this conveyor belt of players, this awesome mentality, this conveyor belt of coaches. Just the rugby intellect of this country is off the scale. They know what they're doing. They are all about and they've boiled it down to it's about tries. We outscore you with tries. That's how we play you, and you're just not
space and speed equals tries. Tries equal more points than any of your silly 3-pointers could ever amount to.
No issue.
So no issue. Yeah.
And what they did, that quote that I drew earlier in the podcast about Steve Hansen saying, you're going to be afraid to come to us and take us on up front. That was something that he said after the first test. And the first test, they completely caught the Lions cold by basically changing up the way they played. They had done their homework on the Lions. They saw some weaknesses in the tight and they ran with it. And even though they scored a bunch of tries, basically everything that they did in that game was almost inside 10. They were just steamrolling them, especially in the early parts of that game. They were steamrolling them through the middle, getting good offloads away then, and then putting them away. But they did it physically. They outmuscled them. And I think that was a proud moment for Steve Hansen. I think he loved it. I think he loved doing that to the Lions. And I think he needs to get off that train because every time he's played a Northern Hemisphere team since, or England and Ireland specifically, he has tried to do this thing of beating them at their own game. And he's leaned on Brodie and he's leaned on Sam Whitelock big time. And now a few times now in the last Lions tour that you saw the next week, as much as you can say the next week it was about Sonny Bill, the same problems were there. They didn't score a try in that game. The Lions scored 2. That's
very on All Blacks,
and that's why they lost that game and hence didn't win the series. And again in the final game, as you say, they didn't look themselves. They were going for that. So basically that whole tour, I think they did change up the way they play, or that whole test series. And then usually in the Rugby Championship they're comfortable, they get back to being who they were. The only real time I've seen them struggle being themselves was this year in Wellington, when they were throwing loose passes in the box, who are this whole other entity of classness that we're going to get into. We're doing a great job on defense, just pressuring the outside and forcing those loose passes, and then punishing them for it.
Indeed. And fair few defensive tries. And
they did. And that was great as well. And now since then, the All Blacks have narrowed up again. They did do that prep for these matches, and they definitely planned on thinking, like, you nullify the Irish if you beat them up front. They have nothing if you beat them up front. But how the hell? Why are you trying to beat them up front? Like, that's
get around.
He's like, I'm sure you would nullify us if you beat us up front. But good luck. You're coming to Dublin. Like, we care about this game here. You're up against, like, you're not dealing with mugs here. Joe Schmidt and the boys, like, they're thinking, and they're going to have them firing. You'd want to be doing some kind of performance.
Like, as far as you're playing the homework game and you're playing the kick from hand game, it's like, it's a bit crazy because Bowden's got some techers. But his kicking from hand and his game control, like, he's not going to become Sexton or even Richie Mo'unga, who's actually, I think, a better player of that kind of game if you want to play that kind of game, but they shouldn't because it's not their game. But also as far as homework's concerned, like, you can do all the homework you like. You're not going to match Joe Schmidt's Ireland for the amount of tape that they consume and the amount that they've seen.
Well, that's it's like as soon as you start playing that game, you become just another test side. You become ordinary. Everybody's doing that. Like, you're playing catch up in that regard. And look,
it feels that way.
It's not like it's unimportant to do homework, etc., but what you have is that blistering turnover ability and that ability to find tries.
It's the where space there's a try thing. It's what we were so complimentary about the likes of Fiji and Tonga and as well, where you're looking at them play the game and it's like, sure, you may be 40 points down and you may have lost every set piece and everything's a calamity and all this, and it's 70 minutes gone, but there's space, there's try. And it's like, and they still have that attitude. It's next play, where's the space? And like, that was always like shown in excellent fashion by New Zealand as well, where they did have the set piece to match. They did have good strong defence, good strong maul defence to match. Obviously the pack, like, this is where, like, Hansen's point was salient about, like, you shouldn't come here trying to run over us because we're no mugs in the physical game either. But it wasn't the emphasis of their game. That's where
I think it was in that game.
But that's where a lot of Northern Hemisphere teams had gone awry before. When Wales come down and think maybe we might edge them physically, and then they're thinking, like, no, you won't.
And
you
we'll
won't,
just run
and
around
we'll
you.
run around you. And that's what ended up happening. But like, they seem to have shifted away from that. More specifically in these big games, like, they're still capable of doing it. And anytime they just kind of believe themselves on another level to their opposition, they duly do play that game and look very impressive.
Historically,
all the Australia tests this year for reference.
Indeed, and historically speaking, and in the history of the professional game, and I'm going to include 2011 in this as well. The All Blacks have looked at their worst when the weight of the world has been on their shoulders. And you saw it in 99, you saw it in 2003, you saw it in 2007, you saw it in that 2011 final. You saw it in the Tri-Nations in 2009 when the Box put the pressure on them and the number one spot was on the line, and they did crumble and they lost that game. And like that is a recurring theme that you thought might be put to bed by just how good that 2015 team were. And that 2015 team, I think, are the best team ever to play rugby, probably.
It's an argument, I think so.
And listen, they won the World Cup and now did it. What you're seeing now with this team is some of that old stuff creeping back. You know, they're very loose and they're very good at times, and Barrett gets his 4 tries, but then on the big moments there are crumplings. And if you look at like crumplings, I don't know what that is. They crumble a bit. I don't know. Crumplings. Little moments of crumbling.
Cracks.
Hey, there you go. There you go. But there are those
shades of fallibility.
That's a wonderfully articulate way to put the word crumpling.
Crumplings, I'm
inclined
to agree. I firmly agree with that. They don't have the balance right. The back row is one issue we cited where I just think they're fundamentally inferior to that iteration.
There are a lot of
areas, but there are a lot of areas.
Like, I mean, even at 10, as good as Barrett is, Dan Carter was like a fine wine in that World Cup, and then you had a Barrett off the bench.
Yes,
but even in the centre. Like, as much as we talked
also
about
Crude.
Even in the centre you talked about like the difference between that 2013 clip and that the last week 2018 clip of them attacking us in the last play. One of the big difference makers for them was Man Onu. And as good as Crotty is, and Crotty did end up getting the try in that game, Man Onu was a phenomenal marvel.
Well, sure, in that World Cup, like, Sonny Bill wasn't getting into the team because it was Nonu and Smith originally, and then
in the final Sonny Bill was at 12 and Nonu was at 13.
Yes, that's where it came out in the final, and they linked beautifully. But Sonny Bill wasn't starting most of those games in that run to the World Cup. Like, that's how good that team were and how set they were. Like, they haven't answered those questions in the centres. Goodhue is a fine player. He's not a reader of the game at the same level as Conrad Smith, and he's not a game busting Man on either.
I mean, the big issue that you have to look at then as well, like that you pointed out, is the back row, and like just like how good a player Richie McCaw was for starters, to not have come close to replacing him essentially. Like, there's flirting with Sam Cane, just as you say, ignoring Matt Todd, who was his understudy in the Crusaders, and then like for a team that is so good off turnover ball, to be lacking so fundamentally
such
for
a fundamental route to get
position
turnover
on the park that is basically designed around generating turnover ball.
That's the job.
That's a 7. Like, that's the base mark.
That's why I still don't understand. Like, Artie Sevilla is getting heaps of praise, and I think even looking at his performance by certain metrics, he's having a good game because he's making a lot of tackles.
He's a very good number 8.
He's a very good number 8. This is the point where it's like he's a great number 8. Just not a 7. Like, that's not what a 7 is. And we were very critical, and like loads of Northern Hemisphere journalists love to jump on Eddie Jones during the Six Nations when he's talking about, you're talking about rugby 10 years ago, and you're talking about having an out and out open side, and you don't need one, and then suddenly Scotland are making mugs of you at every breakdown, and then maybe it's like, oh, maybe we do need a 7.
Drafted Sam Underhill.
Who's that boy who we sent away in exile to Swansea? Is it Sam Underhill? Yeah, get him in. And it's like, oh, he's the saviour, and it's like, he's a fine player, but Ireland did a job on him in the Six Nations as well, because we have been creating 7s like that for years. As lovely as a player he is, he's not quite on that level. I think Matt Todd is on a level above Sam Underhill, if I'm honest. Like, in the Crusaders, and I watch a lot of the Crusaders, Matt Todd does a lot of good work, a lot of really good work, and a lot of times what number 7s are there to do gets overlooked. It's not really something reflected in the stats. Things like slowing up ball doesn't get reflected, which, even if you're not getting the turnover, that's another fundamental role that the 7 has to be performing that I don't think Artie Sevilla brings them at all. He just doesn't get.
He picks his moments.
He picks his moment. He gets 1 or 2 good steals, but he's not impactful in the breakdown in that way. Like, when you look at the way Pocock just kind of haunts breakdowns. He's just ready to pounce, and you have to be aware.
He doesn't even want to be the tackler. He flirts behind the tackler and wants to get.
And it means that the multi-phase gets a little bit more static because of it, because you have to resource the ruck. Whereas against New Zealand and Ireland took a few liberties at the weekend with that and got away with it because there's no specialist there to do it. Yeah. Occasionally Goodhue will recognise that there's a chance on here and try and go for it, but he's not there to be doing that. Yeah. There should be a player there like that in there. For sure. It also, I think the net result, like Kieran Reid will get, like he didn't play well, and he's worthy of his bit of flack as well, but I think his role in this team is fundamentally different to his role in the previous team. If you're talking McCaw and Kino doing a lot of that physical work, and then Kieran Reid being the technical, glamorous player out in the wide, getting his hands free, getting those offloads going in the wide channels and setting up some beautiful tries. That's the Kieran Reid we all love, and now he's having to take on CJ Stander roles and stuff, and it just looks a bit of a mess.
It does. The whole team, to be honest with you, and listen, I don't want to levy too much criticism on Steve Hansen, who's a good bloke, and at the end of the day was the manager of that greatest team in the history of rugby, was the coach even of them, and but at the same time, the whole team does look like a mishmash at the moment. Just a mishmash of quality players doing different things in various combinations.
Yeah. And Ben Smith on the wing.
Yeah.
What's that about? He's the best player on the team. He's probably the best player on all teams, because I can't cite a better player than him. Yeah. Because he's that clever, and yet he can't impact on the game from 14.
Well, he was frozen out of it at the weekend, and Damien McKenzie was everywhere. And I thought Damien McKenzie played well. I actually really liked Damien McKenzie. So do I. But Ben Smith is not moved to accommodate any man.
No.
And that's like, you could have McKenzie on the wing, you could have Ben Smith at centre or something.
This is what I've been proposing. Like, obviously Sonny Bill's out at the moment. Crotty Ben Smith as a centre partnership, I think that makes a lot of sense. Ben Smith reminds me a lot of Brian O'Driscoll in the way he plays anyway, even if he plays at fullback. I just think the way he reads the game offensively and defensively, it's just very smart, which is what, and his hands are great too, even though they slot him out on the wing. He's a good passer of a ball,
totally.
So he understands rugby enough to be like, he's not dying with the ball, he's going to keep it alive and find space for other people. It also means you can free up one of those slots in the wing for Waisaki Naholo to come back into the team, who I think he should be in that team realistically.
In a Jacob Stockdale sort of way, where like he's just, you give him space,
he's gonna make something
also
happen.
Himself and Aaron Smith have this cool telepathy thing that would be nice to see a bit more
exactly
of.
And just more tools, and it's just using your weapons, because like Crotty and Goodhue as a centre pairing, like they're very fine players, but they're like, you're not looking at Manonu, Conrad Smith.
No, and you're not looking at those like in that last phase of play when you were looking to guys to make plays. Those guys didn't, and like that's the thing about the Crusaders this year. I mean, that's what finished the game for them was the Crusaders 3/4 line, and like, listen, defensively very solid. They were bullying the whole of Super Rugby, but in terms of their actual broken field techers, they weren't the best team in New Zealand. They weren't. That wasn't how they scored tries, and they needed a bit of that against Ireland. They definitely needed a bit of that against that defence. They needed to see some offloading games. They were missed Sonny Bill, but also you would have loved to see, and again, like, he was just Ben Smith, the guy to bring it was just on the right hand side of the pitch. That's where he was, and that's where he stayed. And the game
couldn't impact on the game.
Game ended before they got it out to the right hand side.
Well, he nearly got that ball, but then Peter O'Mahony took it away from him.
You know what I mean? In that last attacking phase, like, they could have spun it out wide. They did get it to him once with a nice over,
and he
pass.
made he looked instantly dangerous.
It was their most dangerous moment when they went across, and before they got it back right, they had knocked it on. And like, listen, he was just out there when he should have been the man in there making the plays. So for sure, I agree with you. I think it's a good call. Yeah,
because he's always impressed me, Ben Smith. I don't understand. Sure, I believe that McKenzie is a fine player. I think there's possibly even an argument for Ben Smith at fullback and then McKenzie at 23. I like what McKenzie offers from 23 as well. I'm not forgetting him out of the team at all, because I think he's a phenomenal player. And
we love him. We used to have a great Damien McKenzie segment on the podcast.
Indeed,
like, he's a Chiefs man.
This is it, and James Lowe, who's now become a firm favourite of us as Leinster fans, but we were already loving it.
We already loved
watching the Chiefs and DMAC and Lowe tearing it up. So I'm a full fan of DMAC in there. But I think there's just more balance to be done in there, and they don't know what they're doing with their centres. They got no inroads at the weekend, and it's just it's like, we don't want to be it's very easy to be throwing stones even here for having just won it. But that's not what this is all about. It's like, I think they still have the ingredients to be a World Cup winning team.
Oh,
But
I mean, listen, they're probably
just-
still favourites.
yeah,
But
it's like I just see a lot more problems than I've ever really associated with the
And
All Black team.
considering
and
that they're
comparing
gonna,
to the last
they're
team,
going to have to play South Africa,
yeah,
and if they lose that game, which
they
they
have
could,
to play Ireland.
they have to play Ireland.
Yeah,
So it's fraught with danger for them.
It is.
It really is
Yeah.
the World Cup, and like they're going to need some big performances early in that tournament, and like. Steve Hansen was thoroughly outcoached by Joe Schmidt at the weekend, and like the point is being made all over the New Zealand media. What would Joe Schmidt's All Blacks look like? Would they be, there probably would be more structures. There would be a plan to every position. They would know what they're doing. They would have a plan B. They wouldn't be aimlessly kicking the ball away.
no,
And like, it's harsh because it's the only real down patch in Stephen Hansen's All Black tenure, and I still think he's a very smart guy, and he's talking about this new way, whatever the hell it is. I have my suspicions.
That was the quote that we wanted to lead this off with, actually, where he'd mentioned it in the post-match presser, where he was like, we're caught between the old way and the new way of playing, or we want to change our way of playing and we're caught between them, and when we get it right we'll see some improvements, was what he said, which was an interesting thing for a coach to say in that kind of arena post game like that. But
was it the old way was that all attacking flair that possibly cost them the game against South Africa, where they wouldn't even take a drop kick.
Yeah, well, now
And then
that's
this new
obviously
way-
wrong-headed.
Yeah, and then
Like-
this new way is just the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yes, indeed. There's a balance to be struck somewhere.
For sure.
But I think it has to involve them playing the way they do. And this is where, like, them being empowered to play is so important, where they're not as structured as a Joe Schmidt team.
I agree.
They have shapes, but those shapes are designed to give these playmakers options to play the game
and
find
just to
space.
read where the space is.
Yeah.
Look up and see what the defense is doing, and then isolate where the space is. There's always space somewhere. It's a big pitch, and then try and execute plays to find it. And usually they do have the techers to do it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the structure of the team, they need to think. They with any luck, the conveyor belt will turn up a tight head who can take them to the World Cup. Look at Dane Coles' quality, Cody Taylor's quality, the second rows are quality. They need to find a back row. They need to do that next year over Super Rugby, and then into June and the I'm not sure if there is a June series next year. There isn't. It's just a shortened rugby championship and some pre-World Cup playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's over those games are going to be huge for them in terms of finding basically a back row and a centre partnership, and then deciding what they want to do with the game. And if they are going for Aaron Smith and Bowden Barrett, it can't be this new way of, like, if it's a new way, you may as well ditch Barrett or move him to fullback or whatever the hell.
Move him fullback and pick Moanga.
Because Aaron Smith and Bodie Barrett are far from the top end of Test rugby when it comes to the kicking, controlling, slow 10-man rugby game.
Yes,
That's not their game.
No, that's more Sexton and Murray kind of play than Barrett and Smith, which we associate with 4 tries against Australia and all that kind of lovely stuff. They just seem to be caught in between themselves, and I definitely think there's something in that where as soon as they start analysing things too much, things like, oh, they have a rush defence, so we're going to kick behind them all day, and it's like, no, that's surely wrong. And like there were one or two of them, like the TJ Perinara one at 77 minutes, that was the one that annoyed me the most, because they had a scrum advantage on their own. I think it was between their 10 metre and 10 metre and their 22 in the 5 metre line, and he just dinked it over aimlessly over the top to be snaffled up by Ireland, reset for a scrum in their tram lines in their own half. And that takes another minute and a half off the clock, and I'm just like, what are they doing? What are they doing? I don't know. It was, I don't know if
they kicked a kick for 16-9 as well.
They did, which is
to make, like, going for the draw. As soon as they kicked, from our fans' perspective, as soon as they took that kick, we were like, oh, they're going for the draw. I'm starting to feel confident here.
That was literally that was the moment in the match when I suddenly stopped feeling quite the ball of nerves that I was. Even the Stockdale try, I still had that horrible feeling that it's like, I'm just going to go bang bang try, because I've seen them do it many times before. But then kicking 3 from there was mental, because that was the one period of play where they were starting to get some dominance over us, and they were starting to find some space and some soft shoulders to win a few contacts, and it was just looking dangerous, and then they kicked 3, and it's like, it was crazy. By my estimation, it was a bit crazy.
Anyway, listen, learnings for Steve Hansen and the boys, and the All Blacks. They have some work to do, because they got a hell of a tough World Cup draw. So it's gonna be it's gonna make for bloody interesting next year.
It surely is. Yeah.
The third part of that trifecta were also in action. The Springboks. I mean,
managing to get the win in Murrayfield, which you were not that
I wasn't
confident.
touting. I mean,
for
just
it too.
like you tout history a lot, and I was just looking at recent history and just the degree to which Scotland do not take losses in Murrayfield. I loved this game. I thought it was a lot of fun. They're my two favourite non-Irish sides in World Rugby. There was some, especially early doors, those 2 tries for 7-all were cracking. It was cracking stuff. Like there's some lovely Hugh Jones touches and everything else. It was a really fun
test
game.
match.
But the Springboks, that's a hell of a shift put in on the Scots in Murrayfield, and the degree to which, like again, as they did to England and Twickenham, it's just the degree to which they were physically stronger than the Scots was massive, and the degree to which they could win contacts and just make no mistake, they're bloody good, and Razzie has them firing. And it's almost like a year ago I would be having the conversation about how good the Saffas are in sort of optimism that they could get to this peak, and now I'm having the conversation and gee whiz, they're doing it and they're good, they're
good already. And now they're a year out, and it's just going to be marked improvement, I think, because they've always had the players. This is it, like, and it's always been very frustrating to watch a rudderless South Africa play poorly and lose so many games. Like the last time they came to Dublin, they lost 38-3. And it's like, what is going on in the world that a South African team can come to Dublin and ship 38 points and only score 3, which they kicked in the second half at 14-0 down.
Totally.
It was just painful to watch all of that. But Razzie seems to have them rediscovering what it means to be a Springbok, and that was a problem we had cited before, where like their club teams play a very chaotic brand of rugby that is a lot of high octane pacey stuff, but a lot of speculative defence, a lot of plays taken off, a lot of cheap scores, and it's like that can't bleed into the Springbok mentality, which it did. Whereas like the Springboks have to be a different institution, a different entity built on physicality, and
totally
they thoroughly are.
He did it basically with one, like there was a couple of key things. Like for the June tour of England, they were still defensively very loose, and it was all about basically redrafting Faf de Klerk and picking Andre Pollard, as they should have done. It was basically, and Veli LaRue also redrafted, and it was basically just like, as much as we've loved our Andres Coetzee for their solidity and our Lionel Mapus for charging, like this is like Ross Cronje and Yankees obviously in the halfbacks were their own issue, but this is the height of our talents. These are truly our best players, and they were given liberties to really play and really go after England, especially when they went 24-3 down and they just opened them up. And that first test, it was just an immaculate display of glorious running rugby, and it was just an evidence to everyone that holy crap, these boys can play. Then there was some stuttering performances as things started to change for them, and their defence was still not ideal. And then it was that game in Wellington where they implemented that just really aggressive, really super uber aggressive blitz system with a load of individual reads, specifically from 13. It was originally Nathaniel Am, and now it's Jesse Creel with Am's injury. Am is going to come back in next year. He's very good as well, and it was originally that. It's now it's they've basically stuck with that philosophy ever since that game, because it worked for them in that game, and they fire out of the line. They really do. They come flying out. They try and shut off the outside, and look to make plays and make hits and make reads. And it's less about shape and more about making hits and making reads. A lot of the time they try and number up, but then it's about individuals, and it's been a good way to galvanise them. Like as much as you think there are going to be ways to pick that apart going forward, and you saw some evidence of that with the Scots, because Finn Russell's like, you think you're going to cut off the outside on me, I'll skip 17 men with my left hand.
Flicky pass.
Here comes
Finn pass.
I love a good flick pass, he says. He's only delighted to see someone shooting out on the outside, and like there are weaknesses there. But as you point out, where the defence was and where the defence is domestically, it's everything that they've needed, as well as the personnel men. Like Vermeulen back in there is so huge
as well. There's very few Uzer Kasims appearing in the jersey now, and just a few kind of passenger jersey feeling. Like at one point they started with wingers that were Scussan and Raymond Rule. They started a rugby championship that way.
Yeah.
And it's like a little compilation vid of Raymond Rule's all of his missed tackles off restarts, of which there were many. And it was just
that was insane.
Like
the game was insane.
No, it's great to see just some ridiculous kind of errors being rectified in that front, and just plugging holes and cleaning house is essentially what his job is.
Amount of talent, like McPimpy came in this year and he's actually got injured, but in the game that he played, he looked phenomenal, a real threat. And then you have obviously Dianti and Nkosi are very, very solid operators on the wing, and then a wild Cheslin to throw into the mix off the bench,
which is a good option.
Is only a good thing. And no, listen, they've got just talent to burn, a very solid defense, a scrummager in Kitsoff who is a maniac. He's a monster. I mean, Nell is the saviour of the Scottish scrum. He has come in and solidified things, and Kitsoff just destroyed him. And that is
the other thing
massive.
they have is super powerful locks.
Yeah.
Which helps with their scrummagers, helps even their mediocre scrummagers in the front row appear much stronger because they have a rotation of monster locks.
I'm looking forward to seeing Kitsoff and Furlong go at it, because I think Kitsoff is probably the best loose head scrummager in the world. Obviously we don't get to see Ireland South Africa possibly until the quarterfinal of the World Cup next year. In fact, definitely not until then. But it's a fascinating matchup when it happens, because Kitsoff is probably in this tour solidified the number one jersey, where the beast I think is going to be 17 at one come World Cup
which
time.
is a serious that's
good.
No
bad thing.
There's danger all over them now, and the All Blacks will be ruining the fact that they've got their act together this year.
Yes.
And
as far as weaknesses are concerned for them, there are a few. They do shoot up in defence. There are holes to be found. Like for that Hugh Jones, it was actually Horn who got it, but it was all about Hugh Jones that try at the start of the game when they did get outside them. Scotland as well are elite in attacking. Well, that's all they need is a sniff, and they just tore them asunder. It was a glorious try to watch. The line out, the All Blacks picked them apart this year, and they do have to watch that. The England picked them apart as well.
No, that is a problem.
Is an issue.
Marks has a few wobbles in his game in the big moments, which
overthrows or whatever.
Overthrows, which is a bit crazy considering they have 3 locks on the pitch as well. Like, I don't know why they're doing that if not for line out stability.
And a Khaleesi who's a very capable operator as well. So,
it seems a bit weird. All right,
and that's a fixable area. And the other area is just they've removed the tendency to drift from them. What Razzie has yet to remove is just something that you never see out of Ireland anymore, because of the Joe Schmidt punishment factor. It's just guys taking plays off.
It's true.
And that Scottish line-out try, that was the clever move. But like, you look at Kitsoff goes and shoots on the first man. He sees him shaping to do it, and he charges at the first man. And then Wilco Lowe is just looking for a lift, and it's his man, Wilco Lowe's man, who just runs in behind him as he's looking for a lift. And it's like, you're not looking. And when your whole defense is based around making reads, you have to be looking.
I know. They've been switched on the whole time, and they just consistently aren't.
On average, a try a game, I would say,
out of just
falling asleep. Falling asleep.
The amount of tries that I've seen out of the Springboks, and it's a bit disconcerting. It's more than just 1 or 2 slight errors. We're talking trends, and we're talking bad habits in teams, and that's definitely one of the Springboks. It's so repeatedly true.
They were comfortable in that game. They were and then it was just a draw, just suddenly like that. But great cojones to see at home then from Pollard and the boys, and Pollard is great.
Pollard is the most contact friendly 10 I know, and I know Johnny Sexton is class physical 10 as well, but nothing on Pollard. Pollard is basically half centre, half 10.
Yes, he is.
And like, he's not quite the quarterback that Johnny is. Like, occasionally you see him throw a pass that's the wrong option, and they get caught behind the gain line. But it's less of an issue for the Springboks
because Faf is their general.
And it's like it's kind of a game off 9 because their forwards are so big, because it's a Springbok game. It's
that's why, like, as much as I liked Papier's performance, I think Faf is so key for them when he comes in, because he's like, he just dictates everything and so gloriously. He's such a mad thing, and he's a great man for picking the right options, and he just takes that burden off Pollard.
But what I really like about Pollard, and I think it gives a lot to their game, because you see a lot of these 10s. I say George Ford is a good example of someone who it happens a lot to, but they're like, it's a typical mold of 10 where they're kind of sit a little bit deep sometimes when they're not winning contacts and just chip it on. And if they get isolated behind the gain line, there's nothing for them to do other than kind of get mushed. Pollard never and get mushed. He actually tucks his head and tries to smash props out of the way.
He has the opposite problem sometimes where he's taking too much contact.
Yeah, this is it. Like, he literally misses some space out wide because he wants to go in for the soft shoulder, which, fair play to him, he minds the football and he scores some tries that way. So it's like I don't have any issues with him being the contact at all. It's very much, it's what you want from a Springbok 10. It's like what do you want this team to be about, and then what do you want in your 10 to reflect that. And it's like Pollard. The only thing you need, and listen, Yankees and Pollard has been something that's been interesting off the bench. It has, because Pollard is playing like 12 anyway sometimes. So it gives Yankees looks to have a lot more freedom about him off the bench as well. He's actually making some good passes. He's not being as deep as all that, and because if he stands too deep, he'll be behind Pollard, who just refused to get behind him. Indeed, well, this is why it's a good balance, because he does stand too deep. I think it's an ideal balance when you don't have a Faf. It's fine to bring that in, because Pollard definitely needs that extra distributor. I mean, he's great there when there's Vili and there's Faf, but like by himself, I think there's that you can isolate him, and then they can just look a little flat. I'd suspect in an Ireland kind of like overthinking, overanalyzing thing, they can probably give him certain looks where he'll want to go into. You can probably shoot on the outside. Looks like it's cut off, so you're forcing him back in there. But oh no, you have a jackal there. There's Joe. That's certainly a nice idea for a coach to target the Springboks. I think it's what Wales did to Ireland in 2011, basically only to their back rowers instead of their 10. Actually, no, they did it to Rog as well. They shot up outside Rog, forced him in, forced him to look for things, and then attacked the football. That's the kind of thing that you would look to do to Pollard, but they have a lot of bulk, and they have a lot of other options in there, the Springboks, so they're feeling pretty confident. I'd say they are. As far as the Scots are concerned, the usual madness, the degree to which they were outclassed is gonna, like, I know it was a 6-point game in the end, but it's gonna hurt them a bit. Like they can mix it with anyone in the backfield, they can mix it with anyone off chaos ball, they can mix it with anyone when they get outside them. They need more strings to their bow now. You know, they have some good breakdown players, but they're weak up like compared to the elite, which I'm talking about. Ireland, New Zealand, South Africa, and then Wales and England flirt with it and leave it sometimes. But compared France are not as far removed as they are letting on. They're getting there. But in terms of Scotland entering that bracket, there are things missing. I mean, as much as we love Pollard, like, he's going to take it into the contact, and yet still off first phase off a line out, he does a dummy and then runs through a massive hole. What the hell is that? Scotland midfield defensively, question marks. And their selection this weekend, more question marks. But we'll get onto that probably towards the end of the podcast. But surely it is towards the end of the podcast. I'd say so. We should probably wrap it up soon enough, actually. But was it like we thoroughly enjoyed that game, the Scotland South African one. It was a great spectacle. Fair play to South Africa for getting the win. Probably a timely enough. You're right in saying it will hurt Scotland, that loss, just that evidence that it had only been since I think 2016 or 2017. It had only been the All Blacks who had won in Murrayfield, and that was a nice thing. And then not only did they lose, but they were kind of manhandled a little bit. And then but for that trick play and a couple of other moments, it probably could have been more. But the Springboks saw it home comfortably, more comfortable than the 6-point scoreline reflects. And they need a bit more versatility all over the park, in attack, in defence. There are work-ons, and it seems to me like we used to admire that Scotland are our original favourite sons on this podcast because of the way they approach the game, and Gregor is still on that cloud. He's just doubling down and doubling down. We'll go with more crazy attacking play. And listen, I'd love to see it come off for them. I fear for them though. They're in that malaise with Ireland, the Springboks, and the All Blacks in the pools. So they're going to play Ireland in the pool, and then they're going to play one of South Africa and the All Blacks in the quarterfinal, and it's just going to be a bloody hard time for them. It's true. It's true. Their game against Japan is going to be some spectacle though. They're both pacey teams. I think they'll win, but I think they'll concede a few tries as well. I think it'll be like a good fun game. 54-21, nice, that kind of thing. Good to watch. But just we'll wrap up a bit more housekeeping. There were other games, I suppose, that actually happened at the weekend. Who knew? But not us. No, we did. We watched them. Italy, Australia. I'm going to start with. Although because I did watch this game. Thought it was interesting. Australia going for more of what we were saying, like Cheika just trying to figure out his options, he's just trying to sort things out for the next World Cup. Adam Ashley Cooper making a return on the wing, playing some fine footy as well. He looks to have gained a little bit of weight compared to the last time I saw him. Probably not quite as quick, but he's still a very clever player. Still reads the game very, very well. Would be including him in the squad.
Cheika is going to have no issue drafting in Adam Ashley Cooper. In fact, it makes all the sense in the world. It's fine. You may as well play him at 13.
Foley at 12 though.
Yeah.
Nah,
I can't imagine that worked.
No to that.
I think this.
It was interesting though, because like Italy had them under the cosh in the first half, and Italy scored a perfectly legitimate try off line out that was called offside, that wasn't offside.
I saw that. Yeah.
It was good scrum halfery, as in I'd be scrum halfing that.
Yeah,
because it was a try. Like it was.
But it was a game for those remarks.
Yeah, whatever. But like it was a game changing moment, because like Italy, after execute, they're one of those, like, when you accept that you're the inferior team in a game and you're sticking to your coach's thing, and then after all of this pressure and thing, you finally get the play that gets the try after the 30 minutes of the pressure, and it gets called back and it's bullshit, and then they just kind of crumbled. Like it was only really,
that is the difference in a nutshell between the tier 2 teams and the tier 1 teams. Like you look at Georgia, even Japan, which I know we get to just in the present, I guess. Like they had a moment like that in the England game where they had a chance to get back in the game. They were in the 22 and they got a wrong penalty call against them. But then like the response to that was to concede 3 tries.
Indeed, in quick succession.
Yeah. And that's the difference, is that like Ireland get a call against them and it's like, alright, shit happens, next job, because we're still feeling in the mix. But like when you're a tier 2 team playing a tier 1 team, you always feel like you need
the last chance.
Yeah, you need every moment to go your way.
Yeah.
And when one doesn't and it's wrong, it's such an injustice. It just deflates the whole team.
Yeah, well, it gets everyone thinking. If everyone starts thinking, oh, this ref's again, everything's no, and then before you know it, strike. Australia managed to string together a few tries. It was a disjointed enough performance from them. To be honest, it was a bit of a disjointed game. Probably to be expected with the mishmash of a team they'd named.
It's crazy to me that Cheika, I mean, like, listen, it's possibly just we're defenders of Cheika on this podcast and always will be. There are limited resources over in Australia. When you look at what their Super Rugby sides look like, you know, it's there's not a lot to work with. You know, they're drafting in Tongan after Tongan, and I just don't know how sustainable that model is.
Well, I know they're taking back their lovely Scotty Fardy that we've been enjoying. Very much up here in Leinster.
They'll do that for sure.
Yeah.
But as far as assembling a squad, it seems like his only solution to fixing these problems is to just pick the same players in various combinations. Well, Foley's not working at 10, but stick him at 12. Tamua's not working at 12. He'll play 10.
Yes, it doesn't.
Beale has been moving around.
He was on the bench this time.
He was on the bench
he
this
was
time.
Watching the boys,
right?
And then I like. You know, it went about as expected and was as disjointed as expected. There were positives from an Italian point of view about the first half, and then there were some negatives from an Italian point of view about the second half and the way the game finished. But you know, as expected. In other news, Romania conceded a lot of points to the USA.
USA are, as they were last week, are on the march towards the top of tier 2.
Yeah,
I think they moved ahead of Italy in the world rankings this week, which is
that's a big step for them.
I mean, listen, Italy are definitely artificially subdued by the amount and
the amount of whoopings they have to take
in a year, and the other tier 2 teams don't get enough games against tier 1 teams, which is an advantage for Italy, but it hurts them in the rankings.
Indeed, yeah. That kind of was typified by their performance against Georgia and by Georgia's performance against them.
I agree. A
good illustration of that point.
Indeed. But a big win for the US, who are coming to Dublin this week, and that'll be interesting.
Wales put 74 on Tonga, but that wasn't the whole story. Tonga were in the game.
It was 24 all at one point.
Yeah, in the second half. But then, fitness wise, I don't think the Tongans
51 points, 50 points even in succession
in around 30 minutes or so. I don't know, like like Wales love running rugby and attacking rugby, but that's all of it silly wise, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then, a bit of fun. But the one that I enjoyed the most of all the other games was definitely the first half of England-Japan. Well, listen, first half of England-Japan was wonderful viewing.
I went on a rant about this last week because I was so annoyed at the attitude that they had about this Japan game. They got everything that they deserved, and Kyle Sinclair knocked the ball on again when he came on.
Yeah, and
like he did against the All Blacks.
Upon.
And like they're just and Eddie Jones's talk, not only is it crass and rude and disrespectful,
unbecoming of a rugby team.
Yeah, and just drags the whole discourse that surrounds the game down a couple of levels. Like, it doesn't actually work. Against any team worth your salt, it doesn't work. And what I love about Japan from a rugby playing perspective is that they bring
techers.
Yeah,
they bring techers to the game,
they do just keep playing.
Yeah.
They just always keep playing.
Yeah.
Like Michael Leach, jeez, I was
retiring
him a couple of years ago.
Know,
here he is,
it was a vintage performance from him. He was up in the lineouts. He was on the wing, stepping through. Oh my God, Dylan Hartley missing floundering tackles on him.
It was great.
Yeah, it was beautiful viewing. To be honest, they deserved it. And then Japan did wilt in the end, which we kind of felt was going to happen, but we would have loved to see them go the whole way and make it.
Yeah, it was that refereeing decision that seemed to knock the stuff.
It did a little bit, but it was lovely hearing the murmurs around Twickenham as well. There was a hefty chorus of for large periods, and yeah, too right. Like England were a disjointed team themselves. They were giving up space, but they looked inferior as far as their catch pass game was concerned.
Yeah,
and it was only the bringing Farrell back on was really what helped them. That and the fact that Itoje was a giant on the pitch.
Yes.
He was literally he's a giant on most pitches anyway, but it was laughable the way he stacked up against the opposition in Japan. He was just swatting players aside. But Farrell changed it up with a few good kicks from hand, pinned him back, and the class ultimately told. But they were kept under 40 and they deserved.
No, listen, it was a cracking game. It was a cracking game of rugby in a lot of ways. But from England's perspective, they're nowhere near where they want to be. And crucially, what they have to they cannot talk their way and bluff their way into being a good rugby team. There's work that has to be done. I mean, we've covered them ad nauseum since we've been back on the podcast in terms of all these little areas that they're not getting quite right, and they need to be fixed. With solutions to problems, and then what you talk about in the press room is just sort of spinning what's happened the last couple of weeks as England are back, baby, let's rock and roll, we're going to put 60 on Japan. It's just shite. And it
after one point to a misfiring ball kicking Toulouse, or not Toulouse, what are we talking about? All Blacks. Interesting little slip
Loss
there.
and Toulouse have been disturbingly associated. Don't say we don't remember that.
Yeah, like an elephant over here. Yeah. I remember it well. But no,
it's still weighing on the Leinster part of the brain.
Yeah, there's a little part of the psyche that still has Toulouse just effervescing up every now and then as a worry just springs into mind.
It's exactly what the Toulouse fans are like.
I know, planting seeds, sowing seeds. But no, they after a 1 point loss to an All Black team that kicked the ball more than I can recall ever seeing an All Black team do, certainly in that first half. And it's like they didn't score points from the 24th minute on, and yet you're back. What does that mean?
Like the point is that they didn't solve any of the problems. They just stroked their own egos for a week and then got dealt an embarrassing-ish performance by Japan. And listen, it was fine. Yeah. The other games that happened at the weekend, France stuffed Argentina. It was a good game to watch.
It was actually, they didn't quite they were in
they were comfortable.
They looked superior. But it took a while, and it took an absolute calamity of a play from Argentina.
It was an absolute Argentina in November play.
It really was. Yeah, it's the kind of thing that won't happen at the World Cup. We won't see anything
they just get bored.
Of it though.
They just get bored of rugby by the time they've been playing so much of it with the Haggard
so much
the Rugby Championship.
Watching rugby on the plane, on the umpteenth plane.
Bored of it and start thinking about TV shows or whatever, and then dropping the ball and France are scoring.
Yeah.
They're in for another stuffing this week, Argentina, I think, as well. I think they're done.
Field.
And then possibly
they have to play Barbarians after. It seems a bit crazy, but
Georgia, after struggling against Samoa in that game in I think it was actually not in Tbilisi, but it was in Georgia. It was a weird game. It was a different stadium. And they had that game.
They had been where they were
down 19-10 down and feeling very ignominious. And then I actually missed the first half and just clicked in. I was like, oh no, Georgia. And then they did start to
grind them back.
They played really well, and to a comeback like that was impressive.
That's good progress from them, because we've raised doubts about Georgia's ability to come back before.
They never lost their heads, which I suppose isn't in their nature to do.
No.
They are quite calm and composed,
patient.
But the Samoans just they genuinely just didn't look like they could handle the physicality of it. As it's just started.
Well, certainly.
to
I think fitness is an issue as well for Samoa, same as a few other kind of South Sea Island. Things like the last 20 minutes look very, very different from the first 20 minutes as far as their output. So Georgia managed that well, and then there was the repassage for the World Cup.
That's been going on the last couple of weeks.
Yes,
we missed it.
We kind of haven't really been covering it as well as we should have, but it's boiled down now to Hong Kong, Canada.
Well, it's boiled down as one way of putting it. Hong Kong's win over Kenya and Canada's win over Germany. Germany had won. Canada's win over Germany has basically sealed it for them.
Right.
I think Hong Kong have to beat Canada 5-0.
Right.
In points to go through. So it looks like Canada. It's a shame from an entirely superficial perspective, just that we've seen Canada a lot and we love the sevens team
of
Kenya, that we'd like to see Kenya in there. It'd also be nice to see Hong Kong in there. It'd be nice to see a new team in there.
Sure,
Germany's a little bit of a weird one because all of this nonsense that's been going on in Europe has seen them there.
Yeah, I don't like the politics of it and the
listen, they were creased by every team in Europe this year, so it would be silly if they made the World Cup. It's silly enough that Russia are in the bloody thing. It would be sillier still if Germany made it. So that's fine. It looks like Canada are going to make it. All is going as expected, and good luck to them. The Canucks back in the World Cup where they should be.
This is it. God, DTH Van der Merwe maybe bagging some good tries.
Rugby's been going down in Canada, so it's like I think a lost qualification for them might have been devastating just towards funding. Like TSN cover the games over there, so you probably do need a bit of that spice. Like the Canada USA game actually gets some good crowds and some good hype whenever it comes around. I wish that they'd persist with that Pacific Nations Cup, which was one of the best ideas they ever had, but obviously just had no interest in funding it after a while.
And no money coming in, a lot of travel,
plenty of money to spend on other things.
Yes,
but it was could they solve the travel problem by just having it in Sacramento? I digress.
Anyway,
but it's good to see Canada properly in the World Cup. Anyway,
sure,
congrats to them. In terms of what's going on this week, we do have
first game Friday, Hong Kong v Canada.
Friday, Hong Kong, Canada. The All Blacks are going to take out their anger on Italy.
Poor Italy.
Yeah.
That'll be a fun massacre to watch.
Yeah, Japan are actually playing against Russia in an interesting game that I expect to
probably be a bit of a blowout as well. I think Japan are going to school them.
Yeah.
I hope so anyway.
Scotland are playing Argentina. I expect the Argy Bargies to be just about done for the season in that game. Scotland do have a mad selection.
Scotland with Finn Russell at 12.
Yeah.
What?
That man's not a 12.
What? Could we see the best game out of Orlando and De La Fuente that we've seen in a little while? As
they played pretty well.
Traditional experienced centres are tearing up the nonsense.
It'd be a nice narrative, but I suspect that Scotland will as well Josh Strauss back, and I just think
that's a real positive. It's good to see Josh Strauss back. He's a great player.
I think they're going to be motivated to come out and perform, especially their front forward pack. Scotland, I think they're going to be.
Well, you feel selection woes because Gilchrist is in and Gray is in, which is obviously your prime first choice Scotland second row combination.
I agree with that. I like Gilchrist a lot.
Yeah, I do too. Really quality player.
He has that Josh scrum cap that roves around wearing a Scotland jersey.
Yes,
but I think that game's just going to be an illustration of two teams at very different points in the season.
Probably likely. I think they're actually of a similar standard.
I agree.
I actually think, and even in terms of the danger they present, they're interesting teams. But one's at the beginning of their season, the other trailing off to the end. Ireland
get to hopefully back up their win with a 15 fresh faces, one hopes, and a win against the US in
hopefully
Dublin.
This is the first time the US will have ever played in the Aviva Stadium, which is an interesting little one.
Good for them.
AJ,
listen,
McGinty might be starting for
they've been going really well, and I kind of almost in a non-patriotic way hope they show something and put it up to us and give us things to think about, and and maybe even in a self-interested way, in the sense that it might bring us back down and give us, they might present an interesting shape for us for a bit. That's the hope. France playing Fiji, they're a World Cup team. They're not really at the races, and I think they're going to get stuffed.
I want them to grab a try.
They will.
They'll get delicious.
They'll get a try. The highlights will be a fun watch for that one.
Yeah, I think so, because I think France will throw it around a bit.
The only thing about Fiji is that I hope they get a good strength and conditioning coach in there, because Leone Nakarawa, when fit, is probably one of the best second rows in the world, but they have him stuffed to the gills with whatever the hell in France, and he's just become a giant man, and it's like, you know, he is a giant man, but in a different way. He's almost an athlete body shape, and they have him into this like big block man.
Yeah.
And as much as his hands are still great, you need him loose in those wide channels, moving a bit. And right now he doesn't look like that.
The top couture is not conducive to optimal conditioning.
That's why the World Cup is so different from everything else, because you get your squad for a few months to do with them what you want.
Yeah.
So hopefully they get some good coaches in to do some good things with them. As far as this game is concerned, it'll be a blowout.
I think so. Yes. And then we were going to take a bit of a look at.
I was just going to say that England and Australia is also going on, and that is probably the biggest newsworthy game this weekend. It's a shame that we've gone on for 17 hours and you're all dead from starvation at this point, because you just haven't been able to take your eyes off us. We're that good, but we're killing you. So we're going to have to wrap up soon. So we are going to cut out the England Australia preview, as much as we care tremendously about that game. No, listen, it's going to be interesting. Poor Czech. I hope that Australia win that for I
hope they win it for many reasons, but I don't think they're going to.
No, I don't either. It's not, I swear to you, it's not an anti-English bias. It's just an anti-everything that this English team is doing, with the singular exception of everything Owen Farrell does.
Yes. That's pretty sick. Maro Itoje. Watching Maro Itoje play too.
Yeah, those two boys, the two Sarries boys.
I wish there were more Sarries. This 100%. Is my problem with them. This is our problem with them. It's like, where's your Alex Good? Where's your Brad Barrett? Those are integral cogs in the Sarries machine that are missing from the England machine.
Scotland have the good grace to pick Sean Maitland over there, 500,000 wingers. Because he's a Sarrie.
That's it. But it's like, no, we need a few more Bath men.
No. But we are going to just in the interests of getting the video out on it, we are going to cover the Wales South Africa game super quickly. And this game is a game in terms of on paper, you know, third versus I think fifth in the world. They're all like, these are two of the top teams. I regrettably just by mere, since the Six Nations, just by mere coincidence, every big test rugby weekend that's gone on, I've had a tendency to watch all or most of the games, but exclude the Wales games. I saw the highlights of what they did in Argentina. They seemed to tear it up. I missed that game that they beat the Springboks in America. I obviously missed the Tonga game last week. I was going to the Ireland-Argentina match, so I watched back highlights of the 9-6 win, but I didn't see that in full against Australia. So Wales have been going like a freight train now for some time, and I've missed most of what's going on ever since, because Scarlets have obviously simmered down, and I assumed with that would go Wales, but they've actually changed up their selection. You're actually seeing fewer Scarlets players. You're seeing more integrated Welsh players, and then obviously this change in styles where they're not doing the Scarlets thing that they were doing in the Six Nations, scoring flashy tries, and they do seem to be winning games in different ways. I'm just very, very curious to sit down and watch them this time and see if they have what it takes to shake up what is a phenomenal South Africa team.
Both sides will want to win it, because like Wales are obviously targeting 4 from 4, which they haven't done in donkey's years in November. November has never really been their best time of year, and this is going very well so far. They'll be primed and ready for it. South Africa will be very keen to sign off the year on a positive. Totally. After a few ups and downs, it's been an interesting transition of a year. Some major highs, some kind of low ebbs as well. They had some questionable performances in amongst all that as well. They had that little phase near the start of the Rugby Championship where they were just box kick it long and work on their defence for a while, which was fun to watch. I'm interested in who's gonna win the collisions, because both teams prioritise that a lot in terms of getting all of their shape going. And
I'm definitely biased in the sense that I haven't been obviously, as I've said, I haven't been following Wales as nearly as much as I've been following South Africa. I look at the game and I see dangerous matchups for Wales. I really do. Like, obviously the fatigue factor has to come into it, because it's the end of the Springbok season and everything else, but you expect them to lift themselves for one more game. They've won the last 2, to be highly motivated to go and finish this season
with a winning
tour. So as much as Wales you would give the edge at line out time, I would give Box the edge physically up front. I would give Box the edge certainly in the scrum. And then you look at just that phase play and the winning of contacts, and then the Box defence that shuts them down. I certainly think I feel comfortable saying it's not going to be another 9-6 win. I would back the Box to edge that kind of game. I would back the Box to find tries in that kind of game.
Yeah.
I think that what Wales have to be looking at is that rush defence and exploiting the holes that rush defence leaves behind.
Which requires a bit of Scarlet play.
It does, 100%, and I would lean towards, if he's fit, Patchell at 10.
So would I. I think he just
sees the game a bit more.
Yeah, but he brings the wider men in a little bit more than the other ones. Like, Bigger's a lovely player, but he kicks it a little too much. Yeah. And Anscombe's a very fine player, but maybe better off at fullback this week,
especially
with the absence of Lee Halfpenny. And the fact that you kind of want to play that game against the Springboks, you want to get outside that.
Well, I like Liam Williams at fullback.
I do too.
Have George North, and you can have the other lad they've been playing on the wing. Who have they been
his
playing on the
name?
wing?
He's a young lad.
Josh Adams.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No. Like, it's obviously it'll come down to Wales grabbing tries. Gareth Davis being sharp off the base as well, and trying to be quicker. Trying to be quicker than South Africa all around the park all day.
Yes, exactly. And because I think physically the matchup isn't great for them.
I don't think so. But they will stick with Hadley Parks. Hadley Parks versus Delindy in the midfield will be an interesting meeting of the Smashies.
Yes. Yeah.
Curious to see who gets the best of that as well.
Well,
I'd love to see. I think Wales will probably try and employ him as somewhat of a deceptive tactic and try and go around.
I would think that would be the smart thing to do.
Yeah. Well, that's what I expect anyway, because it just doesn't seem to stack up perfectly for them. Hadley Parks is perfectly built to get over the 10-12 George Ford Farrell axis if you want, but he's not built to smash over Delindy.
Warren Ball could never crack the Springboks, even at its peak.
No, it's true.
And even at the Springboks' slump, it could never crack the Springboks. And this is a bloody good Springboks team.
Indeed.
It's not to be they're not to be trifled with. They are to be flash scored against, and I'm curious to see if we're going to get the picture of what it looks like when their rush defence gets exploited. Because Wales
Wales will try and implement a rush defence as well, probably led by Jay Davis on the wide flank as well, but try and pressurise Pollard, because Pollard doesn't tend to kick as often as he maybe ought to sometimes.
But the Boks aren't going to go too wide too soon.
I don't think so. I think it'll be Delindy carries.
Not just Delindy carries. You're talking Vermeulen carries, and
in the wide channels,
or in the short channels, and Peter Steff and Snyman as well. They've been very good at getting over the gain line and getting offloads away in those narrow channels inside 10, and that from there you look to generate quick ball and then move it. The only antidote to that for Wales is just not retreating far enough and still blitzing up and not getting called for being obviously offside, which they like to do.
Yes.
But I mean, it remains to be seen how that's refereed, which will play a big part.
Yes. How loud will the Millennium Stadium be? Because that'll have an impact.
Yeah, I think just in terms of mentality, almost like the Ireland All Blacks one. I mean, the Springboks are just, they've had their game against England where it went wrong and they really wanted to win, then they've had their great gutsy at the death win in Paris, and then they've had their good win in Murrayfield, and now they're focusing on Wales. Whereas Wales now Wales are really geared up for this game. I think they definitely have the emotional edge.
I think
the intangible edge is to Wales for sure.
Well, it's just been a long time coming, they feel, for sure. Like, Wales have always been a rugby nation. They're now third in the world. They came second in the Six Nations. They've had a stellar year by all metrics. They need to sign off with a big win against Big Southern, because as much as you might convince yourself that yes, we beat Australia, and that's one of the big three, but they're not really one of the big three. They're like South Africa and New Zealand are on another level from Australia.
They did get a couple of wins against South Africa since they did beat them in the summer as well. But I think at this time with this, it almost feels like the Ulster could see a Springboks and the Springboks over summer, and here we have the actual Springboks. This is what to beat this team is to
well, in terms of World Cup preparation, this is closer to it than the one in summer or anything else. So you don't want to kid yourself either. So it's a huge game for both. I don't know who they're going to pick at 10, and I don't know who they're going to pick at fullback, Wales, which is interesting.
My suspicion is that they will go with Patchell and Anscombe, and they will try and mix it up, and they will throw the ball around a bit. And as far as who's going to win, I don't know. It's a game of learnings. I'm leaning towards the Boks, but then as I say, Wales have the intangible advantages. I think it'll be close. I think there'll be tries. I think it's certainly the game of the weekend.
Oh, for sure. And whatever about the history of England, Australia, or any of that kind of stuff, as far as rugby's concerned, it's Wales, South Africa in Millennium Stadium is the spectacle of the weekend. It's been a lovely November for that as well. Actually, we've all kind of taken our turns having big games, and now like after Ireland and New Zealand's antics last week, we both get to sit on the sidelines. The All Blacks get to take out their frustrations in the afternoon on a bludgeoned Italy. And hopefully we do the same against the US, although I'm curious to see what challenges they pose. But with this game, it's just one that I don't know. I don't know what I think. The other
battle that's massive, obviously, in the context of the game that we haven't even touched on yet, but both sides have been really good, is the breakdown area.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Malcolm Marks, one of the best players in the world at the turnover ball, and then on the other end, you got Tipperick, and you've got
Ken Owens. Is capable of nicking a steal.
Still playing for them at hooker in this tour, or is he injured? I think he's injured actually.
Is he?
Ken Owens, yeah. No, there he is.
No, he is.
He's like a fine.
He's been playing with Scarlets as well.
Yeah.
Ken Owens is good for a steal or two in a big moment as well.
Yeah.
And then they still have Alan Wynne.
Yeah, no, they do. And there's class players all over the park, and but definitely for me, I'd be curious to see if they draft Francois Lowe. I would for this game,
for this particular game. Yeah.
Yes. But certainly, I think your out and out classy ones are Tipperick against Malcolm Marks, actually, who is a hooker, but still that's his game. And it'll be curious to see who gets the edge on just turning over the ball. Do either side get the offensive breakdown right, or is it going to be a lot of turnovers, a lot of chaos ball,
a lot of flopping? Is there flopping? And that's another thing, actually. Technically, South Africa's clear outs, if I'm going to cite an issue, and it is still an issue even in these Razzie years, they still rely on the bigitude factor as opposed to the actual get under and move them. So if someone manages to lock onto a ball, like, you can see some forwards just come in and flop all over them.
They also are one of many sides who play fast and loose with the side entry rule.
Yes, indeed.
And listen, there's strength in numbers with that. Everyone does it and it never gets called. But it's a weird one.
Indeed. Well, you get a tetchy ref on a certain day and you can have a penalty.
One of these seasons they'll decide to crack down on it. And they'll just start calling teams, and whoever adjusts best is going to have a great season.
Indeed.
But they are just going to start calling teams on it because it is getting a bit farcical.
Indeed.
Teams are just going in from any old angle.
And getting them out of there. Which no. And unless it's a neck roll or a head or a swinging arm to the head, it won't be called.
No, that's the focus this year.
What I just don't know what margins is going to come down to. I'd like to say I'd like to make Wales favourites, but my sneaking suspicion is that South Africa sneak it with a sneaky play.
They've been sneaking them all this it'd be very good for them to do that, to go to Europe and get, like, as much as the England game hurt them, to get them 3 on the bounce.
But this feels like a warning shot of a South African season is what it feels like. It's like sleep on them at your peril, because they're still there, or they're still bloody good, and they're so strong, and so good.
And just around the pitch, they, like, talent wise, they have just so many top class players. Kitsoff, argument for best loose head in the world. Malcolm Marks, argument for best hooker in the world. The second row's argument for they're in the conversation for best second rows, or certainly depth wise, having so many options at second row. Then you have Dwayne Vermeulen is in the conversation for best 8 in the world. Faf de Klerk, best 9. Vinny LaRue even at fullback, best attacking fullback.
Faf de Klerk, isn't he always wrongfully omitted from the conversation about best 9?
No, he's nominated for Player of the Year this year.
Yeah, that's true.
The only scrum have to be nominated.
Yeah, it's true, actually. And yet it's always Conor Murray v Aaron Smith,
because Conor Murray and Aaron Smith are bloody good. But he's in there. He's in that conversation, no question. And what's fascinating about it is that they're 3 totally different players,
ways to play the game.
You have Aaron Smith, who's just all techers, has this perfect pass and creates that killer pass, and then you have the general in Faf, who's moving everything around and everything's
challenging
off
the line occasionally.
And then you've Conor Murray, who's, I guess, is a general as well, but of a different sort.
And he is the superior box kicker in the world. He has actually taken that skill to a new level.
Which is game management in general.
But with that, we're going to wrap it up, because we've been a long time going, but this is our usual shtick now, and that's no strange thing for us to be going way too long. But when we get talking rugby, we get talking rugby, and as even though we didn't probably plan on breaking down the Ireland match for quite as long as we did, that's life. It's life. It's not often that we beat the All Blacks. In fact, it's only ever happened twice. But we've seen both. Yes.
Come on, Ireland.
Failed. Is
this the right way? Yes, it is. It is an all. Come on, Ireland.
Yeah,
we did it.
We did it.
We bloody well did it. Everybody take note. And stop moving the goalposts for us. You know, we beat the All Blacks. You're like, you didn't beat the real All Blacks. Then we beat the real All Blacks. Like, you didn't do it in New Zealand.
Yeah.
We did it. You bastards.
We're going to New Zealand in 2020 though.
Yeah, that's true.
Three match
That's a
test.
potentially a post-Joe era venture. So we'll see what happens.
Doesn't bear thinking about now anyway.
Time. Come on, Ireland.
Come on, Ireland.
Come on, Ireland.
I'll wear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Listen,
We're
done.
We're delighted and we're done.
Yeah.
Because all technical analysis aside, come on, Ireland.
Yeah.
And we'll chat to you after.
See you, folks. Bye. I was reaching for that before we ended it, but bye. Now here we go.
Now.
This is our post-credit sequence here.
Just
miserable.
wiped it off.
Go on, have a go. Have a go. Oh, he's nailed it.
Yeah.
Jeez. That's a sickener.